Boom! What up, fam? Surprise fucking motion graphics there going on. I got a new desk, so I'm pretty excited with it. My second standing desk, which is fucking dope. Anyway, welcome back to the Redman Group, episode 140. Anthony Johnson here, CEO and co-founder of the Redman Group, president of 21 Studios, the Manosphere, 21 Convention, 22 Convention, 21 University. We are sponsored today by 21university.com. Go there, sign up, free trial for 30 days, and it's $20 a month, $19.99 to stay if you want. Supports the channel, Redman Group, 21 Studios, 21 Convention, all that stuff. You can also search 21 University on the App Store, Google or Apple. Download the free app, same thing, free 30-day trial. It's got all the exclusive new speeches from 21 Convention there, early, ad-free, censorship-free. I appreciate you having an account, downloading the app, leaving a review, all that good jazz. Now, without further ado, today's episode is 140 of the Redman Group. It's going to be guest starring today, on the show, DDJ, Doomsday Jesus, author of The Feminist Lie. You guys should check that book out on Amazon. It's fucking dope. Bestseller. Very, very hot item. And he's a great dude. I've met him in real life, so I've kind of vetted this guy, know him, spent a couple weeks with him in Florida back in 2019. Very good man. He's been on the show a bunch of times. And today we're going to talk about the truth about MGTOW, which is the predominant community in the tribe of the Manosphere that DDJ Bob Lewis is from. He's one of the most respected leaders and the wisest leaders, in my judgment, in the MGTOW community right now. And we're going to be talking about the MGTOW community itself, what it means, the misconceptions, the truths about it, the falsehoods, and how it compares to the other tribes and such in the Manosphere itself. PUA, dating coaches, red pill, MRA, men's rights, things like that. Now, without further ado, welcome to the show today, Mr. DDJ himself. What's up, fam?
Hey, what's going on, man? It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on today.
Fuck yeah, man. I'm very excited. I think this needs to be done. You know, we've done a lot of truth about videos lately. Last week, of course, we did the state of the red pill with Undead Chronic and his buddy, the Party Frog. Thought that went really good. So I'm excited to follow up with a much more focused video on MGTOW itself. So again, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, and one of the things I have to say that I was really impressed about with regard to Undead Chronic and Ribby is that both are well spoken, both really consider kind of their message, what they're going to say prior to saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that both have a fair amount of not just education, but they've really spent a lot of time about thinking about these things. And the reality is that stupid people can't do comedy,
Yep.
and they
Yep.
demonstrate, that because they're able to successfully do comedy, um, you know, they have a couple more brain cells
Well,
rather
that's why,
than
if you notice, no
chromosomes.
one, my enemies that I fight and make fun of and stuff that you see a lot, they can't even make any memes back because they're such losers. They're just dumb. And
Right.
you have to be intelligent. You have to have a high IQ to make memes. And I'm the meme lord, obviously, like a
Well,
warlord in the manosphere.
and yeah, and just as importantly, you have to have a sense of wit. So I totally
Hmm.
get that.
Yeah.
Um, so while I've been here,
Disclaimer,
go ahead.
disclaimer, hang on real quick. I'm not MGTOW, by the way, for anybody new to the show. I do have a respect for the community and an interest, and I think it needs to be discussed. That's we're doing the show today. But I'm kind of a neutral party looking to observe and, investigate this community with you now.
He says that now.
Yeah. Yep. But
All right.
continue. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. So for those people who don't know me, um, I got into law accidentally. I was a Joe Schmo blue collar worker in my early 20s when my children got into a situation. I was a single father with custody of my kids, and my kids got into a situation where they were being physically, psychologically, emotionally, and sexually assaulted by their stepfather. And when I went out of my way to protect them, um, the entire system was arrayed against me. I mean, you would think that when you report a crime to the sheriff's department, they would step in and go, "Yeah, let's do an investigation." That never happened. You would
Damn.
think that Child Protective Services would step in. That never happened. You would think that there were, other opportunities for people to come in and protect these kids because that's their stated mission in many of these cases, like the family court and all these things. None of that happened. And so let me increase my volume. Hold on. Is that a little better?
Yeah, it's fine for me. I was just asking the audience to make sure on the chat.
Right. Well, I just turned mine up a little bit. I hope that's better for the audience.
Okay.
Um, and so anyway, my my biggest concern in this process was protecting my kids. But what I found in the process of doing that was that not only was I the only one, or not the only one going through this, but there were many other fathers, many other, and even actually in some cases, mothers going through this same sort of thing. And it was really frustrating because we were all on the same page and we were all trying to protect our children. And this actually created a a natural transition from me just kind of being normal to walking into the MRA community. We fast forward a little bit farther, we passed a couple laws, but what I found was over the course of time was that, working in the legal field, I ended up becoming a paralegal. I've been a paralegal since 1996, focusing primarily on what I refer to as high conflict litigation. So a lot of people think divorce in general is high conflict, and while emotionally charged, from a legal standpoint, it's not. But when I say high conflict, I'm talking about issues of child abuse, issues of multiple streams of litigation, accusations, as well as false accusations in defending against them. And one of the things I found in researching the case law, in writing the briefs, doing the research, and learning from all these attorneys was that for every person you help, there's three or four getting screwed.
Hmm.
And I realized very quickly that I had to be able to find a way not only to help myself and move on, but I had to figure out a way, to my mind, to help other people in a way to where they can help themselves. And a lot of people, they want you to fish for them. They don't want to learn how to fish. They don't want to do the work necessary. They think it's daunting. They would rather, go watch the sports game or go play the video game
This is
or,
my fishing handbook, by the way, if I ever
yeah,
get divorce raped. So I'm
there
just
you go.
showing it off.
Well,
Show
and
alert.
and and I'm getting ready to actually write a divorce manual,
Oh, nice.
how to survive family court type of situation.
Hmm.
So yeah, so hashtag shill alert. Check out the book. And to that regard too, when I wrote the book, I thought I was going to be like the old man. I'm a grandfather. I thought I was going to be like the old man screaming, "Get off my lawn!" Right?
Hmm.
The book became a bestseller in multiple areas. It's got a 4.5 out of 5 stars, nearly 400 reviews. Um, a lot of people have read it. I believe it's necessary reading for any man, 16 and over. And as far as all that's concerned, jumping back to kind of where I come from, when my second divorce failed, see, I made the mistake that a lot of guys make. I got divorced or got divorced first time, and I went, "Oh, that's her fault," which was somewhat accurate, but really, I should have probably never been married to begin with to that particular person. I chose poorly.
Hmm.
I was young, I was dumb, and when you're young and dumb, you think you're invincible. You think you can do no wrong. And
Yeah, it's the old saying, young, dumb, full cum, right?
it is, yeah. And really, my lack of knowledge was replaced by an overestimation of my, aggression and confidence. And let
Yep.
me tell you something, nobody out alphas the family court. I don't care who you are. You are not out alphaing the family court. You are not going to out alpha the law enforcement agent with the gun standing by your car, pulling you over
Yep.
for a ticket or anything else, right?
Yep.
Um, And if by chance you do, trust me, you're going to end up dead at some point very soon from, government and law enforcement.
Yep.
So, but that said, um, I really realized with my second marriage and its failure, I realized the problem wasn't me. And what I found was that in addition to really focusing on the core of the problem, I realized the problem was bigger than the family court. It was bigger than discrimination against men or what it was is it was a form of institutionalized misandry that had been happening for a long time. But it's just like the immigration debate, right? So like I was one of the first people when the conversation about immigration came up. I was one of the first people on the internet that said, look, these illegal immigrants are being taken advantage of just as much as everybody else is concerned. And part of that is because you had illegal traffickers, human traffickers, both in the NGOs and working with the cartels who were going through and they were telling these immigrants a lie. So you get these immigrants heading up to the United States. The women, like 70, 80% of these women are getting sexually assaulted. Many of these men are getting assaulted. All of them are being extorted. And basically, by the time they get to the United States borders, they're crime victims and they're suffering from PTSD and a variety of other things. Well, the same is true with regard to institutionalized misandry as it relates to men and women. So a lot of women have been lied to and they've been told, look, you
I
have
found
to
this nice YouTube channel, by the way, called Miss Andrew Today. It's a great channel. You should check it out, man.
it's not only on YouTube, Miss Andrew Today is now on BitChute and it is also on minds.com.
Bingo.
Um, but the point is that not only were these men being lied to, generations of men being lied to, or being definitely misinformed, but on the same token, the women were being lied to as well. They were told, look, you can have it all. You could be a professional, you can go get your degree, you can do anything a man can do. And we've all seen the videos of the female cops in the UK just getting wrecked
Yep.
because they don't have the physical capacity as a male police officer, and they don't command the respect. We've all seen the articles, and you can go back 10 years, and there's articles from professional feminists from, like I said, up to 10 years ago, and they're miserable.
Hmm.
And I want to say there was a lady in the United Kingdom who was a second wave feminist. She opened up the first um, men's shelter, domestic violence shelter in the United Kingdom, and she said, I think it was a men's shelter. I don't quote me on that part. I don't remember completely, but one of the things she said was that feminism is really good for a woman under 30. Any woman who's over 30, all of a sudden by year, feminism, the advantages of feminism go down. And that's because, in part, feminism promotes the ideology of me. In other words, the individual over everything else. And so it destroys, yeah, Aaron Pizzi, there we go. So it destroys families, it destroys marriages, it destroys men, it destroys children. And in the end, after all those things are dead and gone, and that familial legacy is dead, and trust me, divorce creates multi-generational trauma.
Yep.
It is, your children go through it, their children go through it. It becomes your family history. It
Well, can
becomes
we
your family
let's
legacy. Go ahead.
can we pause on that because I'm sure you have some stats we can pull out here pretty fast, and I'm vaguely familiar with them too. It's that once you get divorced, the odds. Well, number one, if you're married and you have children, someday if they get married, they have a chance of divorce, like anyone else, right? Duh.
Sure.
Absent other statistical factors and demographic factors. The issue I think you're getting at is that the once you get divorced, the parents, the odds of the children getting divorced go up, and then that passes on to the grandchildren, who will then themselves have a higher probability. You know what I mean? Like it's so it's is that
Assuming
kind of what you're referring to?
assuming that your children get there. So you
Yeah,
have to
that's a good
understand
point.
that, like, once that divorce happens, you're talking, this becomes full spectrum trauma for these kids. So
Okay.
these kids, even before they turn 18, they're more likely to be suicidal. They're more likely to live high risk lifestyles. They're
Mhm.
more likely to do drugs and alcohol, be suffering from depression, and all those other things that are there, right? And then on top of that, here's a secret that most people aren't going to tell you about divorce. A man and woman get divorced, right? And let's say the woman is suffering from bipolar, or she's suffering from some other mental health issue, or maybe she's, an alcoholic that got out of control. Maybe, she was like the binge drinker and now she's the day drinker type of thing.
Mhm.
You go to court, the man gets raked over the coals in court. He brings all this to the court's attention. The court doesn't care. He loses custody of his kids. Now, part of that is because the courts are misandrous. And I've said this many times, and I'm going through other cases where I'm helping clients, and they're finding this to be true. You're going to get a more fair court case if you are an African American male and your judge, jury, and executioner is all members of the KKK than you will in family court in front of feminists. Now,
Damn.
with that said, um, what ends up happening then is, and here's the dirty little secret, those children become job creators. And what I mean by that is that once the divorce is over, once the woman is won, she's like, yay, I'm a woman, hear me roar, right? And everybody else kind of carried her through. Like, it's kind of like her, um, what do they call it? Uh, I can't even think of the word right now. But basically, she doesn't do the work herself. Like, everybody else carries her through, right? So
Mhm.
anyway, my point is that once everything is done, once the divorce is said and done, and then the kids go to school and the kids tell one of their school counselors, mommy likes white wine, mommy likes red wine, or mommy likes, vodka cranberries, or
Mommy
whatever
likes
the
all the
deal is.
wine.
Mommy likes all the wine, or whatever the situation is, right? They tell their counselor this. CPS comes in and swoops up their kids and takes them from her too,
Mhm.
because they put these children purposefully in harm's way in order to take the kids from the mom to put them in the foster care system. So not only is the family court earning income and getting federal dollars as a direct result of dad getting divorce raped in the family court and just getting raked over the coals, right? But in addition to that, the court and the state and the local governments are only they're also getting federal funds from Title 4D programs, Then, when you transfer these kids to Child Protective Services, you can now triple dip into the federal dollars under Title 4E, which is the juvenile court system. So the point here is that these children are job creators. These children are basically economic powerhouses that basically create and maintain these county and state level welfare states. And it is an absolute tragedy. So the reason I want to bring that up is because I think that talking about the welfare state, you can't really have a well-educated, well-informed conversation about misandry, about MGTOW, about the manosphere, or about men without really talking about the damage and the destructive power of the welfare state. Now, with
Mm.
that said, now that you kind of have that context in your mind, those were the things I was thinking about when I first discovered. Well, I wouldn't say discovered. I mean, I had been kind of online since mid 2000s, between 2000 2010, probably 2003 to 2007 or something. Um, and I started thinking about MGTOW and I started discovering MGTOW content. And many people weren't really discussing it in those terms. But like PUAs were discussing it in those terms at the time and those sorts of things. Now, with that said, MGTOW made sense. Walk the
Mm.
fuck away, right? And the reason that that was so compelling and so powerful to me is because you see, once a man loses the divorce, once he loses custody, once he's forced on child support, normally set too high, by design, by the way, they just keep coming. Anytime the man says something, anytime he becomes a protective parent, they rake him over the coals. Listen, I doxed myself to file my lawsuit against Google. Okay.
Mhm.
My divorce is public record. Anybody who is interested, who hates me or respects me enough, who wants to look at my background, my divorce is public record. My failed appeal to defend my divorce, or my post divorce, was a public record. It was a
And
5 year fight.
do you have some haters in the manosphere like myself?
Uh, I have some people who identify as being a portion of the manosphere who are haters, but I
Okay.
mean, nobody important enough to bring up. I mean, look, when you're
Well,
when you're over the
I'm just like
target.
generally asking. I don't know
Yeah, of
anything.
course I do.
I'm a
Of
total
course I do.
dummy. I'm
Of
just
course I
asking.
do.
Yeah.
I mean, but there's reasons for that, and we'll get into that in a moment. But I think that
Mhm.
what I'm saying is that I was a protective parent. I didn't do anything wrong with my kids, and they raked me over the coals. I have like 5 or 6 volumes at the trial court level, folders, huge folders of documentation showing how they just completely wrecked me. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't get anybody to defend me, and everybody in the system was corrupt. And so part of walking away is I even tell men, I said, look, when you get divorced, leave the fucking state. If you don't have custody of your kids, get out of the jurisdiction, get out of the state. And in 2021, that is more important today than it was when I got divorced the first time in 1993, or when I got divorced the second time in 2014 to 2016. So
Mm.
you have to understand that the idea of the MGTOW philosophy, as I see it and as I perceive it and as I understand it, this isn't anything that's new. It's been going on for 15, 20 years. And there's been a
Mhm.
lot of really intelligent, insightful, witty, and worldly experienced men having these conversations. This isn't just something that like blue collar America figured out. These are conversations that were happening globally on forums and things like that. And back when Google Hangouts was a thing, there were Hangouts about this stuff before many of these content creators that we know about now ever even existed. And I know this because I've done the history. Now, with that said, my idea, my conception, my perception of the MGTOW philosophy, and it's not an ideology, it is a philosophy, because these are choices men make. And the philosophy, as I understand it, consists of 3 prongs. Now, with that said, I want to make one caveat before I get started. Okay. And this is going to be something that people are they're not really going to be happy about. But the red pill truth is not to coddle your emotions, right? Nobody's going to hold your ball sack for you. So, one of the main criticisms of the MGTOW philosophy that people make outside, and including traditional conservatives, PUAs, dating coaches, regular conservatives within the manosphere, is that MGTOW are cowards that they run and they hide while society deteriorates, that they've identified the problem, but they refuse to be part of the solution. And when it comes to modern MGTOW voices, these people are absolutely over the target. They are right on point. MGTOW, to many of these modern voices, is it helps each man, but it doesn't help men as a community, and it doesn't help men from a multi-generational fashion. Now,
Mm.
the reason I bring this up is because the question then is, if MGTOW helps men individually, and it helps men generally, and it helps men in multiple generations of men, then what is it that MGTOW does to do that? Because people aren't seeing it. So to that said, the reason that that perception exists and the reason it is accurate is twofold. One, it's misinformed people criticizing MGTOW, and two, it's MGTOW voices ignoring the roots of their philosophy. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of MGTOW voices out there who advocate, and this has been going on since about 2014, 2015, who advocate men to avoid voting and avoid other forms of political participation, either
Mm.
on a national scale or on a local scale. Okay. They say, no, MGTOW is an apolitical philosophy, and that's how it should be.
Well, hang
But
on, because even in the wider manosphere, such as the red pill, they have this apolitical stupidity, and we've talked about it.
well, and
And
and and and I want to address that right on the
yeah,
nose before we get into the philosophy, because I think that a lot of people, well, they kind of had generic arguments about that. The problem is that no one until now, to my knowledge, with the exception of me, you, and a couple other people, have ever really addressed this head on. So
mm,
think of the idea of being apolitical by using the following analogy. Okay, the MGTOW and the Manosphere voices who advocate being apolitical are the same as cuckolds who advertise online for other men to sleep with their wives. Now, why do I say that? It's because the only difference between these political cuckolds and literal cuckolds is these political cuckolds sit by and watch while communists and socialists bareback and spit roast our Constitution, leaving it with potentially incurable ideological STDs in an effort to kill it without ever interfering, with the sole exception of maybe recording it on their phones. Then, like literal cuckolds, they're forced to drink the socialist afterflow of the communist policies designed to discriminate against men. Now, why do I bring this up? Why am I sitting here? I mean, this sounds like I'm taking shots across the bow, and the reality is I'm not. That is an accurate description. And if you don't believe me, look at the United States political climate, 2015, and then look at it today in 2021. Okay, the amount of political participation is at an all-time low when it comes to men, especially self-reliant men, and it is at an all-time high when it comes to socialists and communists and people who want to destroy our government. In fact, it's so popular with them, some of them are voting 2, 3, 5 times. Other people are actually coming back from the dead and voting, hence the reason we have the current White House. But that said, the originators of the MGTOW philosophy, the ones who coined the term MGTOW, the ones who created the manifesto, they had a solution for this. And the solution is this: you promote limited government. The government should only be as large as necessary to serve the people it governs and to protect the Constitution. Now, the reason I bring that up is because socialism, communism, feminism, and misandry cannot exist without the financial and legal support of a bloated welfare state backed by corporate censorship and backed by corporate sponsors, which
mm,
is really what the United States and many countries in the Western world have devolved into. So this is the challenge that a lot of people have, is that this is a red pill a lot of people don't want to look at. And again, there are times where you can look at this and objectively go, hey, your vote doesn't count, right? So like if you're in a deep blue state and you want to vote for a GOP person, odds are that might not work. Does that mean you shouldn't do it? Does that mean you should give up? No, you can't. And somebody brings up the Roman Empire. The reason the Roman Empire failed was because of imperial overstretch. It had nothing to do with any kind of political trigonometry or whatever the fuck it is. Pardon me. So my point is that, you know, when you transfer from a supply and demand economy and you transfer into a financial economy and you start giving out massive levels of welfare, plus you have imperial overstretch and you can't financially support these things, that's what destroys empires. That's what destroyed the Mayans. That's what destroyed the Romans. And today, that is the basis of what we see happening in the United States. We are sending money overseas to countries that don't pay us any tax revenue. They don't compensate us. We're providing them, and all for all intents and purposes, we're providing them with welfare, and Americans are being taxed without representation. These people are not voting to support other people's countries. Okay. Now, the reason I bring that up is because one of the three pillars of the original MGTOW manifesto was limited government. The second one was masculine men. Now, there's a lot of conversation about alpha males versus beta males versus whatever. And the reality is that most men in Western cultures had children. A lot of men did. A lot of men had families, especially prior to the rise of second wave feminism. And there were many men who chose not to for a variety of reasons. And so, supporting masculinity is extremely important because, you want to support men who are not chivalrous. You want to have men around you who demand respect within reason. You want men who are independent, who are self-reliant. And, and by living those lifestyles, these men become role models for other men, for the next generation. So by keeping that limited government where it needs to be, by rejecting the lie of socialism and feminism and the misandry that comes with it, and then combined with men that are strong, I think that's important because men who are internally strong. I don't mean just like lifting weights and how much do you bench and how much do you
Yeah.
deadlift and blah blah blah, right? I'm talking about, you know, internal, emotional and psychological fortitude. A lot of men don't have that today because they lack the multi-generational mentorship because of decades of misandry and institutionalized discrimination against men. And then finally, the
Well, hang
third
on.
pillar. Go
Before
ahead.
you move on to your next and final point, I do want to make a point, and I like doing this frequently because I really mean it. I interviewed you for my first time, I think ever. It was either the first or second time we ever talked, way back in like late 2018, early 2019. And it was an interview just about the extended family in America, the fall of it. And you're the first guy I've ever seen in the manosphere, never mind the rest of culture, focus on the collapse of the extended family. On Fox News and all this rhino crap stuff, you hear about family values and the nuclear family and all this stuff. Not enough, by the way, but you hear a little bit at least. And I think, but mostly it's kind of like smoke and hot air, and with a little bit of truth to it, a little bit of passion to it, a little bit of intensity. Not enough. But you focused on the fall of the extended family, and I was like, damn, that is a simple insight, but a powerful one that people just haven't taken the time to sit down and think about. And I'm like, that's exactly fucking right. When I know them, when my parents are growing up, they had a much closer contact with their great uncles, their aunts, their grandparents. And I had some growing up. I think not enough, and I should have had more. And I think kids today, like Gen Z and shit, they're going to have way less. For whatever a myriad of reasons, probably too. But
Well,
it's
and and
important.
and and what makes things even more difficult when you talk about multi-generational mentorship in the extended family, the
Mhm.
younger generations have been taught and they keep reinforcing this
Oh,
false idea that they need
speak.
to hate the older generations.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's very dumb. I mean, there is some of it I can understand. Like the boomers, for example, are an easy target. But even then, you can't hate all of them, and you can't hate boomers all the time. Like they're Americans like us, and they went through a lot of shit, or their parents did, and it passed off to them. I
Well,
also want to mention though,
go ahead.
My sister's in the hospital right now, and I'll be having a third nephew, I think, by the end of the day. So I'm pretty excited.
Nice.
Uncle life,
Nice.
bro. Hashtag Uncle life.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think that the other side of it is, though, is that people don't really understand what boomers went through to get where they were. I mean, none of this was handed to them, right? I mean, and yeah, they lived in a different society, but they lived in a society that didn't where in the at least in the United States, we didn't have the welfare state back when they were, of breeding age, right? That welfare state didn't exist. Family values still exist. All
Mhm.
these things existed. The world has changed. And now, does that mean that everything they say is ignorant? No. But I think that when you talk about this idea of ignoring the wisdom of older people, the reality is that the only thing that has changed between 2021 and let's say 1921 is the technology. I mean,
Mm,
there's been very few advances in the field of psychology. There's been, I mean, legitimate advances. Okay, I'm not talking about social justice propaganda that masquerades as science, right?
mhm.
I'm talking about actual psychology, and I'm not talking about science viewed through the communist lens or math viewed through the communist lens. That's not what I'm discussing. But that said, that multi generational mentorship is extremely important. And the problem that we have is that when you talk about a lot of the experts, many people who have PhDs, they're scientists, they're social scientists.
Mhm.
Um, they allowed feminists to frame the conversation, and feminists frame the conversation as opposed to the individual woman versus the nuclear family,
Well,
and
hang
the
on,
other
because
side went
feminists took over almost everything in culture over the past 100 years, not just psychology and science and this and that. I mean, it's infected fucking everything, whether it's
right. But
school,
when the first
academic, governments. I mean, the internet. Holy fuck, it's everywhere.
right, but when the first anti-feminists in and MRAs, which by the way are two separate groups, when
Okay.
they first opposed feminism, they made the mistake of allowing feminists to frame the argument. And
Set
by
the rules of the
allowing
game. You mean, right?
Yeah, they set the rules of the game. They set the rules of
Yeah.
engagement, and
Yep.
everybody knows that when you walk into war, you walk in to win. You're not fighting by the way they call it the Queensberry rules or whatever they are of boxing, right? And that's the thing that people don't understand about family court. When you walk into family court, you're not fighting for your divorce. You're fighting for your life. You're fighting for the lives of your children. It is full spectrum warfare. They will have you arrested if they can. They will have your job destroyed. They will destroy your reputation. They will violate your Second Amendment right for you to bear arms under false allegations and pretenses without ever being convicted of a crime, I might add. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the red flag laws that are sweeping the nation today were based on domestic violence, civil domestic violence restraining orders that were created in the 1980s by a woman named Ellen Pence and two of her cronies. And they admitted that they basically created that whole body of scientific work based on fraud. They admitted it in 2000 in a textbook.
A
So,
bunch of nasty women, huh?
well, yeah, and that brings me to the third pillar. So the third pillar is to support feminine women. And so that's why a lot of MGTOW men, well, anybody really in this day and age who identifies as a MGTOW man, this is why they don't get married. They don't get married because they don't want to. The easiest way to avoid divorce is to avoid marriage. And they think that in order for a woman to be feminine, she has to be nurturing, she has to be supportive, she has to be respectful, honest, she has to be not only responsible, but she has to be willing to take accountability for her mistakes.
Hmm.
These are all traits that modern women don't have.
Yep.
And it's not that they don't have because, like, they were born with a vagina, so they're automatically irresponsible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this goes back to my previous statement about how women have been indoctrinated to be this way as well as men. And
Hmm.
so you have all these women who are like, I can do it all. I'm going to go freeze my eggs. And I'm going to work for another 10 years. And then I'm going to get in vitro fertilized and go from there. Well, how's that working out? Number one, you're more likely to have a child with an extra chromosome. It's like it goes up to 1 in 32. Number
Hmm.
two, a lot of these women that go through this situation, the eggs die. The eggs, they get frozen, and they unthaw, or they thaw them, they're dead. And then they try to impregnate the women. There were a couple cases where they've tried to impregnate the women, and these um the eggs don't fertilize. And then when the eggs do fertilize, they most often end in miscarriage. So I think that, the challenge here is that, the idea here is that modern women just aren't worth it. And even if they were worth it on an individual basis, the laws are so misandrist that, you're basically gambling against the house, and it's a rigged game, and the house always wins. So you have this scenario where, the idea of MGTOW is this: it's not anti-feminist in the way that a lot of people think it is. Okay, the MGTOW doesn't fight feminism. That's a men's rights activist thing. That's an ideological thing. What MGTOW does, and the creation of MGTOW, and the main thrust of MGTOW on a practical in a practical sense, is that it gets out of the way of feminism, right? Because MGTOW men know that by ghosting and getting out of the way, all feminists can do at that point is talk to themselves. They're like feminine thinkers, right? And eventually they all devolve into circular firing squads, and they become self cleaning ovens. And we're seeing this now with the schisms between Caucasian feminists and feminists of color and TERFs versus trans and all these different little sub tribes as everybody vies for power, because that's the reality.
Well, look at
Feminism
the
was,
case of, let's give an example. Look at the case of, what's the author of Harry Potter? The famous woman, J.K. What's her name?
yeah,
J.K.
J.K.
Rowling?
Rowling, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she was a pretty hardcore feminist, as I understand it. But then she went against the trans stuff because that was, she saw that, rightly so, as an attack on the rights of women and their, their status in society or whatever. And she got fucking, basically excommunicated. It was a huge shit show. What was it, last year? Maybe 6 to 12 months ago. And it's
Yeah.
like no one, and that woman's, mega billionaire or whatever, and she's not, safe as a hardcore feminist.
Well, again, you have to understand that this is just another demonstration of the feminist lie, right? It's
Mhm.
not about protecting women. It's not about protecting these situations. It's like Tucker Carlson was on television last night, and he went through this whole scenario of these trans individuals being transferred to women's prisons and then assaulting the women while they're there.
Hang
So
on. Let's address a viewer comment right here. I think we could both have some insight on this. Let's
sure.
pause. RM1983 says, "Sounds like PUA dating roaches eating their own lately. Same phenomena." False, in my opinion. False in my judgment. Bullshit. Because we are cleaning house in the manosphere. We're cleaning it of frauds, which is a healthy and productive activity to do, like spring
Well,
cleaning, right? And that's
right.
different. The feminists are eating each other. That's different.
Well, let's take a step back. RM, whoever that person is. Um, so while it's not the case with Anthony's situation, um, it is the case with many people in the PUA community, because
Mm.
they're trying to, pseudo intellectually out alpha each other, because
Sure.
they want to try to, they want to try to quote unquote protect their brand, and they're threatened by anybody else who has, a voice or is considered credible inside any kind of, manosphere dating coach type
You
of
mean
community.
has a pair of balls, basically?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
so
Functioning set.
functioning paraballs, yeah, and
Yeah.
so I think that's yeah, there's a lot of dating coaches out there that are eating their own lately and those types of things. I don't think that
Mhm.
the issue about calling out frauds and things like that, I don't think that qualifies as the same thing. That's like saying that, look, if you have
Yeah.
a philosophical difference with somebody or you have a values difference with somebody, that you have to be able to, um, you know, have it turn into some sort of, beef or anything like that. And I think that people can have differences of opinion. And I think that, my so we're clear, I'm not a leader in the MGTOW community. I'm just a voice that people listen to. I'm one of many. But I think that this idea
I think you're a
of
leader. I think you're the best. So that's my opinion.
and I appreciate that, but what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that, there are a lot of people who disagree with my perspective as well. You have a bunch of people, for example, that are on Social Security, they're living off of other people, they don't have jobs by choice, not because they can't get hired, and those aren't self-reliant men.
When I
But
say
they
you're a leader, by the way, I mean you lead by example and you lead intellectually, which is what really matters. You're not out marching in the streets with a dick hat on. I don't fucking care, and I don't think you need to do that.
No, and
But
I don't think
you're
I don't
leading.
yeah, and I don't think that anybody needs to do that either. But I guess what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that if you're not a self-reliant man and you call yourself, a man going his own way, maybe you need to consider trying to become more self-reliant, find things that you can do, if you've, I mean, look, you go into small town America, and small town America is swarmed with people who are disabled, people who have life altering disabilities. And you know what almost every one of them have? They have a job.
Hmm.
They go to work, despite their disabilities, despite their genetic failings or whatever their set of circumstances are, they have a job. And many of these people end up buying houses, they end up buying cars, they become financially self-sufficient. So this idea that I need to withdraw from society, or I need to not, participate in society as a self-reliant man because I can't get laid. Look, you got it backwards. And the idea is that, if you're one of those people who's not MGTOW, you're just in the manosphere, you're here to try to get some wisdom and that kind of thing, and you don't want to be MGTOW, great, more power to you. But I can tell you this right now: if you go get a job, if you shower every day, if you groom every day, if you exercise every day, there will be a woman out there for you. Now, if you look like Quasimodo, odds are you're not getting a supermodel, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you'll get somebody, but you're not getting a supermodel. And that's one of the reasons why I did this video about 80/20 is because you see these
You mean,
guys.
so you mean if you look like Quasimodo, you'll get like an old fat woman, like the red pill dating coaches?
Potentially, yeah, yeah. You
Mm,
might listen, and the woman you get might actually be dating them at the time she's banging you, and they just don't know it.
nice,
So all
nice.
I'm saying is that when you're talking about this, that's another issue. Now, the other thing I want to bring up is that there are people in the manosphere who mistakenly think that the problems that men have had started with the 19th Amendment. It started by the passage of women's rights.
Yeah.
And I want to put that to bed once and for all using verifiable facts and observable reality. And in order to do that, I want to talk about E. Belfort Bax. E. Belfort Bax was a guy who died in the late 1920s, and he was living in like the late 1800s. And he was a solicitor in the United Kingdom. He was also a prominent anti-feminist, and he was a prominent men's rights advocate. And again, he was an attorney. He was a highly experienced litigation attorney. And he wrote books about how feminism was infecting England. And more importantly, even back then, he had his thumb to the pulse of feminism and was talking about how feminism was impacting the United States at the same time. And one of the things he's talked about is a lot of the same things that I talk about, in that even in family court back then, women had more rights than men, and gynocentrism was basically there were no substantive rights that women didn't have that men did. And what I mean by that is that, did women have the right to vote? No, but they weren't prevented from it. There were many stories and things. Even I even talk about in the feminist lie. There were situations where if you were a landowner, male or female, you got the right to vote.
Mm.
That was typically the law in a lot of places.
There was
And
other
so,
issues in America too, where women got the right to vote if they submitted to military draft or something. Like
yeah,
it's
and feminists voted that down.
yeah.
And that brings me to my next point, which
Is
I
it
think
just
is,
me or are feminists the biggest con artists in America?
uh, I wouldn't say the
'Cause I
biggest, but I would say they're the most successful. They're
bingo.
right up there with communism and socialism, absolutely.
Yeah, those fuckers.
Um, yeah, but I would say that what people don't understand is that, I don't advocate, and I don't think it's practical to say, let's take women's rights away, or let's do this how the jihadis do it. And I've said this before, because here's
Mhm,
your problem. If you go out and you say, I want to help men, and my goal is to help as many men as I can, and I want to help multiple generations of men, then
mhm,
why would you put men in an unnecessary conflict to take women's rights away, if really what you're doing is walking away from women?
mhm.
It just seems like it's counterintuitive to the MGTOW philosophy.
Well, I
And
have some
and
thoughts on this too. When you're wrapping up your
yeah,
point, I don't mean to
just
cut
let me
further.
kind of finish my thought before I lose it,
Sure,
because I'm getting old.
go, go, go.
Um, so my point is that it's not it to me, it's not and it's never been about women's rights, okay? I don't give a shit if women have equal rights to men. That's fine, and here's why. I want equal consequences,
Hmm.
okay? If a man gets drunk and gets behind the wheel of a car and he hits somebody, he's held accountable.
Hmm.
If a woman gets drunk and has a sex with a man and she consents, that man is now a rapist. So how are you going to hold men accountable for being intoxicated, but you're going to tell
But
women that when they get intoxicated, it's not
yeah,
their fault,
well, if me
right?
and you get shit faced and we fuck some women, right? They're not held
Right.
liable for rape. This is fucking delusional. Like, how did
But
I
that's
consent? How did I consent to this woman jumping on my dick if I'm shit faced? Hello,
well, and
but nobody
right,
wants
and
to talk about that.
right, and Thomas Pollock in the chat, yeah, the legal subjection of men. That's one of them. And there's another book that he wrote in 1913. I forget the name of it right now, but I'm in the process of reading it. Now, with that said, the reason I sound young, by the way, is because my testosterone is at a healthy level, and I don't have to shoot myself in the ass with testosterone. Anthony's met me; he knows. But that
Hmm.
said, um, I think that if women have equal consequences to men, that changes the playing field. So, for
Hmm.
example, if a man murders his wife, they throw the book at him. It's domestic violence, it's intentional homicide, it's whatever they can throw at him, right? But if a woman kills and murders her husband, the first thing that comes out of mainstream's mouth, the first thing that comes out of the court's mouth is, what did the husband do to deserve it?
Hmm.
right? It's not let's hold this murderer accountable. It's not let's put this person on trial for first degree murder. It's what did that woman do to deserve it? Here's another example, and this comes from my book. It's the domestic violence chapter in my book, The Feminist Lie. There was a woman's rights advocate. She was a DV advocate in, I want to say, Federal Way, Washington. And this was probably back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And she had a history of violence. She went out to a bar in South Seattle. She walked outside one night. This guy, and she was smoking in front of the bar. This guy walked outside, asked her to light a cigarette. She pulled out a gun and tried to shoot him. It was a revolver. She emptied the entire revolver. She only hit him once because the guy kind of dodged around a little bit. I don't know if it was like a Matrix thing or not. The cops never charged her because she said she was defending herself from sexual assault. And this was back before cameras and everything else. So
Yeah.
this guy's walking around with a bullet in him and she gets to walk free. You fast forward, and again, this woman has a history of violence. She's a complete maniac with anger management problems. Everybody that around her admits this when the trial comes out, right? Yet she's the head of this domestic violence branch or office or whatever. And one of the ladies she's trying to help, they're doing a custody transfer, and the father shows up. The father has his sister in the car. They drive to the custody transfer. Mom is there, and this maniac is sitting in the car with her. They transfer custody. They try to instigate a fight with the father. The father's got a witness there because he's trying to cover his own ass. They get the kids, they get in the car, and they drive away. The mom and the psycho follow him. Okay, they follow him. He gets to his house. He tells he tells it. Pardon me. Just getting a drink there. He tells the sister, take the kids into the house. So they grab one of the kids. They bring the kid in the house. The maniac gets out of the car, rushes up to the driver's seat, plugs this guy twice in the chest with a gun. The guy falls to the ground. Then she stands over him and she murders him. And then she calls the police and tries to say it's self fucking defense. Okay. Now there were witnesses to the shooting, thank God, or else they would have gone with what she said because of who she is. Okay. So they were going to charge her with first degree murder and they were going to throw the book at her. But thanks to all the feminist advocacy in the state of Washington at the time, they dropped it from first to second degree. And then they only gave her like 10 years prison, even though she was
Wow.
absolutely 100% guilty. But here's the thing that really is something that it was missed by everybody. What did they do to mom? Mom was an accomplice. Mom is the one who drove her there. Mom is the one who made up the story that sick this rabid dog on this father in the first place. Mom never got charged. Mom never got arrested. Mom was never investigated at all. So you have to understand, this is a serious, serious issue. And it's something that people don't really talk about. If women had the same consequences as men, both in violence, in court, at work, and all these scenarios, then there it is. If you sit here and you spray paint your clothes on and you go to work and you expect not to be catcalled, well, that's just not reasonable, unless you're built like the backside of a bus or you're a tugboat, right? But I'm just saying that, like, this is you have to have equal consequences. When they've done studies, when women get convicted of crimes, their sentences are 40 to 60% less than men. So we have to be able, if we're really going to talk about equality, then we have to be pointing out the lies. And that's what MGTOW does. It points out the lies, not to fight feminism, but to teach men how to avoid it, how to avoid stepping into the bear trap that's going to potentially lock these guys there, make them
Yep.
starve to death and die.
Yep.
So
So my
go
my
ahead.
follow up point on that, you're mentioning a lot of what you're talking about here is just basically women receiving equal consequences, which you're 100% dead right they don't. And you've cited now a couple examples of where that happens in culture and stuff. My point is harking back to the initial question that popped up about this, and you're looking in the chat too, like me. A lot of discussion about 19th Amendment, taking women's rights away, blah blah blah. So, like you, number one, I don't support that. I don't think it's politically feasible, like ever. I think the country would much sooner collapse in a major catastrophic way, like Rome style stuff, before we remove the 19th Amendment. There's just no fucking chance. I don't see that happening with dedicated effort for 100 years straight. It's not going to happen. So I don't even know why guys advocate for this stuff. It's beyond
Well,
a
I
point.
think that they advocate it. They advocate it because they know that this is what their audience wants to hear. It's like fan
Yeah,
service, right?
they're pandering. Yeah,
Right, but the problem is that, when you make a black and white statement like that, that statement has to be well versed in fact. And a lot of people believe, especially the misinformed, believe
mhm,
that the issue of feminism first came to be a problem when the 19th Amendment was passed. And I'm
yeah,
telling you, that's not the case.
not even
And
close. Yeah,
no, it was an issue since Mill wrote his little thing, what was it called, The Subjection of Women, in 1868. It was an
yeah.
issue when the Seneca Papers were published in the 1800s, I believe, just a little while before that, right around the time the Communist
Seneca,
Manifesto was published.
bingo. Seneca Falls was 1848, I think, and even in
Yeah, it
Britain,
was
you had feminism going before that in the early 19th century.
correct. And the problem is that the more educated voices in the MGTOW community, they actually admit this. So
Mhm.
feminism was an issue, and feminist laws started getting passed in the middle 1800s, 1860, 1870, 1880, 1890, 1900. All of these things, if again, simple math dictates, and again, this is for those people who have opposable thumbs and you're not rocking an extra chromosome, they all happen prior to the 19th Amendment passing. So
Mhm.
it's the 19th Amendment. I think my only problem with the 19th Amendment isn't that women got voting rights. It was that they had none of the consequences and none of the
Yep.
duties required to
Bingo.
earn and keep those voting rights. Okay. And here's what I mean by that. If a man at 18 years old doesn't register for selective service, the draft, okay, he can't vote, he can't hold a federal job, and he can't get federal financial aid for school. If a woman chooses not to register for the draft,
Hang on, it's
she
actually worse. He can go to jail for that shit and face $250,000 in fines. I don't think it's
he
ever happened, but that's
he
on the
can't
books.
he can if he gets called up, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's serious.
but it could be real serious. But the point is that women don't have those same consequences.
Yep.
They don't have the same consequences. And so it's a question of consequence. Now, are women ever going to suffer the same consequences as men per se? Honestly, I don't think they necessarily have to. But let me tell you this. If you want the same jobs as men, if you want to be a CEO of a company, if you want to be a leader, or you want to be an elected official, for example, then you need to show that you've earned it, right? Like so in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, people were like, well, there aren't enough women CEOs, there are not enough women board members, and this and this and that. Well, guess what? Back then, we actually our economy functioned on merit. That's what we functioned on. It wasn't, a reach around program. It was merit. And so the point here is that many of these men were they had worked in that industry for 25 freaking years. Okay. They had earned their right. They had worked their way up the ladder. They became industry experts in whatever company or whatever industry that company that they sat on the board was. They didn't just bring, Joe Schmo off the street like Hunter Biden and go, oh, well, you're a crackhead. Yeah, have a board seat. You'll be great. Right.
Yep.
That wasn't
Yep.
what it was. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that crackheads shouldn't sit on boards, but I think if you're a crackhead and you sit on a board, it should probably be a feminist organization because I guarantee you're probably more clear thinking than most feminists that are out there.
Yep. Let me hit on this comment. So this is a guy who's been talking about the 19th Amendment a lot. I want to dig into it. It's not just him, right? This is he's representing a segment of the manosphere that thinks this way, and the MGTOW even. But even
Sure,
beyond MGTOW, I think it's beyond. It's also in the red pill sometimes.
sure.
So you're hitting the nail on the head, man. Earlier and even more recently here in the conversation, it's not that women have the ability to vote today that is the issue. It's number one, the completely unequal, uneven consequences that come with unequal responsibilities, right? I said in my speech in 2018, I think, at the 21 convention, The Future is Still Masculine, that the 19th Amendment actually represented the death of equality in America, the death of equality between rights and responsibilities. And consequences are part of that equation too, because when you have the rights and then the associated responsibilities, the outcome of that is associated consequences with that, right? Like getting drafted into World War I or World War II and getting your fucking head
Well,
blown off.
and yeah, and let's take a step back here and let's define our terms so that we don't confuse anybody in the back.
Hmm.
I believe in equality in the same way that Martin Luther King did. And what that means is you equal the playing field. May the best man or woman win. Okay.
Hmm.
Equality of opportunity is what I believe in. I don't believe in equality of outcome.
Which
And
is
the reason I
communism.
don't, it's communism, it's socialism, but most importantly, it's fraud. You
Hmm.
destroy merit when you reward the idiots.
Yep. Well, I'm going to finish my point here on this because number one, I agree with you. Number two, I think I'm going to take this somewhere you're really going to enjoy. So, these guys, they're making a point about women voting, and I want to make it clear that in some way, actually limited way, I agree with them. Women voting has consequences, especially when they don't have the associated responsibilities and consequences for voting, right? That come with that. So this is creating an uneven outcome that is really fucking up all of culture, I think, in society and government stuff. My point is, they're not really upset about women having the right to vote. They're upset, justifiably in some ways, about the outcome of women voting. Which, even if there was associated consequences for them, I don't think that would be perfect. I think women getting the right to vote was done in the worst way possible, and that means, like, for example, them not being drafted and the associated responsibilities. Number two, though, even if those existed, which they don't, right? Even, I think recently there was a federal court that decided finally that maybe women are going to be subject to selective service or something, but that's never going to fucking happen, right? If there is World War III, they're going to get fucking, they're going to all cry, get pregnant or whatever and cry whatever the fucking excuse to get out of it.
Well, what they're going to do is while their male counterparts are getting murdered, they're going to have sex with the invaders.
Yep, and you get out. Yeah, bingo. But here's my point, though. It's not women voting that is the issue. It's that women voting has consequences, and a lot of unintended consequences are ones that were not even fucking considered for 2 seconds when this shit was being decided 100 years ago, right? So what we have to do is we have to find, and this is why advocating for women's rights, the 19th Amendment being removed, is stupid. It can't be done, and it's counterproductive. It makes you look like a fucking asshole, and ultimately you miss the point. It's women voting in culture in a way that is destructive and has consequences that are legitimately negative for culture overall, right? We need to address that in a way that makes sense, that respects individual rights. And that's what these fucks are too lazy. I think these MGTOW dudes who are like obsessed with women's rights, they just bitch and pander about 19th Amendment, 19th Amendment. No, you have to find a way to solve the issue rather than wish for the impossible, which I don't think is good anyway. I don't think it's good to dictate who votes and who doesn't based on the way you're born. This to me,
Well,
I don't like. That's fuck, dude. Black, white, Asian, male, female, tall, short. I don't give a fuck. Like,
well,
you need to be born as an American, and your ability to vote should be available to you in some way at some point universally, right? And that doesn't even mean
yeah.
universal suffrage. I don't actually support that. What I'm saying is we can solve this through things like, for example, limiting voting to taxpayers, even in tax filers. I'd be okay with. Even if you file your fucking
Well.
taxes and lose
Hold
them.
on.
Yeah,
Let's actually clarify our terms. Okay.
go for it.
First and foremost, let's tie in what you've said to the current situation. All right.
Okay.
Uh, so the president has said that no amendment is permanent or written in stone. I can tell you exactly what I'm going to do because I'm an asshole. If they decide that they want to hold a constitutional convention and they want to repeal like the First or Second Amendment,
Hmm.
I'm going to ask them to repeal the 19th.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, look, you open the door, bro. No, under normal circumstances, that would be the most absurd thing to do. But I think you say, yeah, let's repeal the 19th Amendment too. I would absolutely be down for that. Like, I would carry a sign for that. And the reason I would do it is because I think that people need to understand there's natural consequences, right? And I guarantee you would see all these white nationalists come out going, we need to repeal the 13th Amendment, right? The
Jesus.
slavery. Okay. I mean, again,
Jesus.
you would watch this thing go full retard so fast that it would be worse than an Adult Swim. Okay.
Yep.
And I mean, but the entertainment value would be massive. Now, with that said, I have to disagree with you on one point.
Well, hang on. I haven't finished my point. Let me
Okay,
finish my
go ahead.
point here.
Go ahead.
Again, it's not even, we say consequences. Let me be more specific. It's the outcome of women voting in the situation that's factual. It's existed for over a little bit over 100 years now, where they don't have equal responsibilities and consequences, right? So the outcome of that is negative, and it's fucking up culture, right? It's fucking up voting demographics. It's fucking up. Why do you think we have so much national debt? National debt is fucking skyrocketed in America since women got the ability to politically influence directly the government through voting, which is what that is. Voting is force, right? You're voting for lawmakers and law enforcement officers with guns to physically, forcefully do things different to other Americans around you. Women have a hand in that now through voting that they can't follow through with because they're not at risk of getting drafted and shit like that, right? My point is, though, we need to solve this in a way that outside of a constitutional convention and all this, 19th Amendment, no, fuck all this shit. if you limited, for example, voting to only net taxpayers or even people who just file fucking taxes, you would massively shrink the voting base, for example, who's actually going to vote, and you would shift it in the direction of men naturally. And if women want to then make it equal it out to 50-50, then get in the fucking workforce or whatever and file your fucking taxes or get married and file jointly. And if you don't do that, and you're some single cat lady on OnlyFans, hashtag thought audit, not filing your fucking taxes, then you don't get the ability to vote. It's that fucking simple. So I think that would actually solve all these MGTOW dudes that are obsessed to the we're only talking about it here as a segment, but they're just like they talk about it every fucking day, right? They bitch, bitch, bitch. It's dumb. It'll never be done. And a real solution would be, just as an example, I'm not even saying this is the be all end all, limit voting to fucking taxpayers only or tax filers. Even if you make one fucking dollar or lose money, I don't care. Did you file your fucking taxes last year or not? Okay, you did, then vote. You didn't, then no fucking vote. And all these thoughts that don't file their taxes, they wouldn't have the ability to vote then anymore, right? This would solve that. So I think that would solve a lot of issues.
Well,
It's simple. It's not even that
yeah,
fucking complicated.
I think that tax filers is probably casting the net too wide. So the
It's
a
better
long
than what
time
we have
ago,
now. It's
a
better than
long
what we
time
have
ago,
now.
yeah, a long time ago, when I was on the TFM show, and this has kind of first brought my attention to it, because we had a lot of conversations about it.
Mhm.
TFM's original position was, if you're in the military, you can vote for president because it's your commander in chief, right?
Mhm. That's good.
If you're not in the military and you're a net taxpayer or a property owner, then you could vote for Congress or the legislature. I think that, and then of course, if you're either one of those things, you can vote for the judiciary for those judiciary positions that are up for the vote.
Now this sounds pretty reasonable and pretty legit. Like this is what I was after with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and that was his original position. I don't know if it's
Coming
changed or
coming
modified
from that
since then.
coming from that retard, I'm kind of surprised.
He,
So
TFM's pretty smart on a lot of things. No disrespect to you or anything like that. He's really smart on a lot
mhm.
of things. But again, I think that when you talk about this, basically what we're saying is, at the end of the day, if you don't have skin in the game, if you're not financially invested, or
Yep.
you're not, blood, sweat, and tears invested in your communities, in your government, in your, um, and you're a net taxpayer, then yeah, you shouldn't vote. Because here's the
Mhm.
thing, right? Let's say you have a town of 50,000 people, okay? And of those 50,000 people, let's just say everyone, for purposes of conversation, every one of those people is 18 and older, and they're all registered to vote legally, right? They got voter ID, the whole thing. And of that 50,000, let's say 13,000 of those people are homeowners. And then a third of those people, whoever's left, or half of whatever's left, is they rent, right? And then the last third, they're all on welfare. Okay.
Mhm.
So the people who rent compared to the people who own, it might have differences in opinion. And the people who are homeowners across the United States traditionally will vote for more conservative positions, America first, constitutional rights, law and order, those types of things. The people who rent often will go either way, right? So you have some that are conservative, some that aren't, and so they vote a little, differently. The problem that you have is that all the people on welfare are going to vote for welfare. They're not going, they're not paying property taxes. They're not supporting the local school district. They're not supporting any of these things, in any kind of real way. They're basically they're parasites on the system. And I don't, and again, I'm not saying everyone, there are people out there who they're veterans and they've got disabilities because they served in war, or maybe they were hit by a car. Again, there's a lot of legitimate reasons people are disabled and they're living on the system, right? I'm not shaming all those people, but what I'm saying is that, if you're on Social Security disability because you just happen to be a drug addict because it's Tuesday, right? Or and not because you got in a car accident and you got addicted to OxyContin thanks to Purdue Pharma. I'm saying those other types of people. The problem that you have is that people on welfare are always going to vote for more welfare, and people
Mhm.
who are landowners are always going to want to truly support their rights. And
Let
so
me say
that's
this
why.
too. Anybody on welfare should have temporarily no ability to vote. Like that should be a trade-off. If you get any
Well,
kind of welfare, no voting for you until you're off of it.
and I also think too that and they've done studies on this. If you have a job, you have higher self-esteem. So
Yeah.
that right there is a mitigating factor for like depression, bipolar, many mental health, things,
Mhm.
plus all the mental health situations. that go with social isolation. If you're sitting at home all day and sitting on the computer because you can't get out, because you don't have a job. I think that, and that was one of the points I was trying to bring up early on, was that, look, there's a lot of small towns in America. They have a lot of disabled people in these towns, and almost all these disabled people work. And some of these people were, they're born with an extra chromosome, or they've got these other, birth defects they have that affect them for their entire life. I think if you can work, you should work. Now, I don't think everybody, is fit to sling a sledgehammer, right? But I think that, you should do a job, or at least get some basic job skills. So I think that when it goes toward where we are today, the idea of, again, unless Biden calls a constitutional convention, or somebody else decides to call a constitutional convention, I don't think that we're going to see the 19th Amendment on the table. But I'll tell you what, if they call a, hold on,
go ahead.
If they call a constitutional convention for the memes, I will absolutely call for repealing the 19th Amendment as a massive troll, because fuck them if they can't take a joke. But that said,
we live in a feminist culture, though. If there was a real constitutional convention tomorrow, I don't think it's off the table that they would remove men from being able to vote. That's how fucking crazy our culture is. Like, I wouldn't. Would you be that surprised if that happened?
No. Well, the problem that you have is that voter fraud is so rampant that you can't trust it. Think about it for a second, right? Steven Crowder has about, 4 million followers on YouTube, right? He did a live stream the other night during President Biden's convention. President Biden was streamed across 4 or 5 channels. And between all those channels, he probably had 50,000 people watching him live. Steven Crowder had 76,000 people watching him. Okay. So you're telling me that this supposed president, who's the most popular president in the history of the country, can't even get the views Steven Crowder gets, right? That's my point. So, when you have Donald Trump showing up and it's, 10,000 people at a live event that's made for 5.
Even more, 50,000.
Right. Yeah. And people are waiting a mile away. You can't ignore the facts on the ground. Now, was there voter fraud? Maybe. The vote was definitely rigged. And here's the thing. They admitted it. I think it was in Newsweek. They admitted it.
Time Magazine.
Time Magazine. They admitted. They said, we had a cartel together and we did all these things to do that. But what they did, even though they admitted the crime, they tried to act as though it was somehow okay, because committing misandry against a man and giving President Trump the family court treatment was somehow justified. Now, I'm not a big Trump fan. I'm not a small Trump fan. But what I am is, as every man who lives in a country should be, you should support your country. You should support your way of life and your culture, right? Irish people who were born in Ireland should support Irish culture. And to that end, let's have another real quick hot take from DDJ. If you were born in the United States, you're indigenous. Anybody who was not born in the United States but enters in here illegally is a colonizer. I want you to think about that. The next time you hear some bigot politician voice reading their script and they say, oh, we need to protect the rights of indigenous people and all these colonizers and all this oppression. Well, guess what? I agree. I was born in the United States. I am an indigenous American.
Me too.
I am an indigenous American citizen. Anthony Johnson is an indigenous American citizen.
Dude, I'm a third generation American.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And we're sitting here having to get our rights subverted for these colonizers who come from other countries. And our taxpayers are going to these people. We're being taxed without representation because we never voted to financially support crime. And illegal immigration is a crime. It's one of many. So, when we have these conversations, let's talk about the objective definitions. Let's not play fuzzy definitions like what Webster's been doing to satisfy the social justice warriors. And then finally, here's another hot take that has nothing to do with any of this. The Chauvin trial, where they found him guilty, people were concerned because the jurors basically were given death threats if they found him innocent. Well, guess what they did instead? Now these jurors are basically crowdsourcing bribes for their guilty verdict. How is that not reversible error? How is that not jury manipulation? These people they have financial incentives to convict Chauvin.
Well, plus Emperor Biden, Chairman Biden, he was advocating publicly for them to convict him, right? President
Well,
of the United
and
States. Isn't
yeah,
that
and
called, what is it? Jury tampering? Is that called?
yeah, and the ideologically compromised FBI said, well, if they were going to
Yeah.
let him go, we were just going to arrest him anyway. They were going to basically do a Julian Assange. So,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, when we're talking about justice, when we're talking about, civil rights, when we're talking about being an indigenous people of this country,
Hmm.
I think that we really need to have these conversations from an objective standpoint. Whether we're talking about the manosphere and how feminism has been cancer well before the 19th Amendment, or
Hmm.
about how it's a lot smarter to tell women, look, you want equal rights, have equal responsibilities, and have equal consequences. Because if you can't do the duties that are required of this job, then go do the duties of the job that you can do. And don't
Hmm.
bitch about it when the pay is less because it's a different job description. Okay.
Well, I think naturally that women struggle with taking responsibility, and fatherhood, a good father, is key, beyond key, to making them into mature adults that can accept responsibility as a mother and a wife, for example, or whatever else she chooses to do in life. So it's like, I'm sure you're going to agree, but it's like culture is stuck in this downward spiral with feminism rowing the boat 1,000 miles an hour to make it go even faster. So it's like, how do we break that cycle before it just fucking crashes on our heads? Or is that where
Honestly,
it's all going to go anyway?
honestly, I don't think we do. I think that,
Mm,
I think that it's important to support limited government. And so I think that if you live in a place that has an over bloated welfare state, or you have an extremely out of balance gynocentric government, and you're in the minority because you're a self-reliant male, and even more so if you're Caucasian, leave. Leave.
mhm,
Go to go to a flyover state. Go to a small town in the state you're in. Find some community that you can live in, that you can reside in, where you can exercise your self-reliance and not be shamed for the privilege. And
mm,
there are many places now, especially because there's a huge, I mean, in response to this massive socialist imbalance we're seeing across the United States, there is a huge revival in evangelical Christianity. And I'm not talking about the feminist infiltrated Christian churches. I'm actually talking about Christian churches that follow the original Bible.
mhm.
And so in those communities, those men are not shamed in the same ways as men are in many in even in suburban communities, right? And so, there are still places in the United States that is still America. And gynocentrism has existed for centuries, but there's always been a balance. There's been kind of a natural order, a natural balance to things. And the laws have followed. But I
Yeah,
think
I mean, look
that
at the founding of the country. I don't think the 1770s, 1780s, 1790s, I don't think they were gynocentric almost at all. Maybe not at all. Certainly nowhere near what we see today or even over the past 50
well,
years.
they were gynocentric because women had the babies, right? And so back then women were the prize, but the difference was
Yeah, but
that
I
these
don't,
women
wait. I don't think that qualifies as gynocentric, though. Gynocentric to me means, what we're seeing today is a high level of it. Everything
I
revolves
think
around
that
women and feminine bullshit.
let me step back and define my terms then. I
Okay.
believe that what we're seeing today is gynocentrism that is out of balance. But I think that if you take this from a survival of the species standpoint, which
Hmm.
I'm doing for sake of conversation, I think that you see that gynocentrism at some level has always been a facet of human society, in that, you know, all these men competed for certain women, all these men competed for the right to breed with this woman or to have a
Sure.
family with her, those types of things. But the thing is that once that woman chose the man that she wanted to be with, that was the man she was with, and she did the work.
I guess my
She
disagreement comes from the fact that if, based on that, I don't think we can claim that the species is gynocentric and that it's always been that way. That to me would defeat the purpose of labeling a current climate, culture, society, generation as gynocentric. It's like, if the label has meaning and impact, it has to be specific to a current time period. And I don't doubt that chivalry and gynocentrism has been morphing over time and has been fluctuating. We see it now to really spiking, and it sucks, right, for culture and for men and for boys and fathers. But I don't think we can say 100,000 years ago that the human species is gynocentric. There was men and women and tribes, and Grok fucked the women and then made babies
I
and all
think,
this fucking
yeah, I mean, listen, I know that there were tribes that were like that. I'm not saying that's not the case. That's why I clarify the terminology and I say
shit. Okay.
gynocentrism versus, you know, gynocentrism out of balance or unhealthy gynocentrism, or, those types of things, right?
Okay.
So that, I guess that's what I'm saying. I mean, we don't necessarily need to quibble about semantics.
I did want
Um,
to hit,
Go ahead.
if you're
Go
done, I
ahead.
want to hit on someone asked about TFM earlier. Let me get this TFM, this fucking weirdo. So this guy's saying the TFM classics are gold. I don't doubt that they were a lot better than what we see today. DDJ used to work with him years ago, and I know that there was a fallout, and I've heard your side of the story. And frankly, I think you're correct in the actions that you took, corrective actions to heal the MGTOW community, make it a more positive place. And for doing the right thing, you get bitched at and screamed at and called Judas and all this fucking garbage. That actually, to me, means you did the right thing. That's a signal, that an indicator that a bunch of ignorant idiots who don't know jack shit about what happens behind the scenes, they bitch at you for doing the right thing. It's like you've seen in movies and stuff 1,000 times, right? Someone does the right fucking thing, and the mob hates you for it. But you have balls, so you stood up and you went through with it. My issue with TFM, who, by the way, is a former guest of the show, he was on the Redman group, probably episode 30, 25 to 35, somewhere in that range, a long time ago. And the episode's still up on Rich Cooper's channel. People can go watch it. My issue with TFM, and people were talking about this in the chat too, the dolls and shit. He's like obsessed with the dolls, blah, blah, blah. So my issue, I'm not even going to get into the dolls too much, other than the dude has married a doll and has a long-term relationship with a doll, an inanimate object. This is really alarming from a psych perspective. Like, any therapist would be really, really legitimately alarmed by this, because it's a universal. He has a completely unilateral power dynamic over an inanimate object. This is something people do that are deeply disturbed. And I think a long time ago, he wasn't into that so much. It was much more hands off, much more distant kind of thing. That he has an Instagram for this doll and is obsessed with the doll and talks about the doll like it's a real fucking thing, has conversations with it. This is sick, twisted behavior, and it's a signal that this guy's deeply disturbed and fucked up. He needs mental help. He needs professional therapy with a licensed clinical psychologist or therapist or psychotherapist or whatever the fuck, anything. This is dangerous, and it's Elliot Rodgers level behavior over a longer period of time. So I think it's extremely alarming. I think that's an objective observation we can make. I think that's controversial, and I think any psychologist, feminist or even anti-feminist, like we would see in the manosphere, for example, guys who are much more legitimate, much more assertive and aggressive in a culture that hates men and fathers and stuff, guys like Sean Smith, Ken Curry, and these things. I think if you ask them, they would be very, very alarmed by this. And Sean Smith, for example, was on that show, TFM. I'm not going to get into his opinions on it that he shared privately. You guys can go ask him. He's free to comment on that as a public figure. But I can tell you flat out, this is not fucking a difficult conversation or a controversial thing. If you marry a doll, and this isn't like some fucking joke you did for a day on Twitter, like, this is really, really bizarre behavior that's dangerous. It's someone who's fucked up in the head. I have no bones about it. I don't take any of that back. The guy's a fucking wacko, whack job, 100%. End rant.
All right. Well, let me kind of share my views.
Sure.
While I did watch a lot of content before I ever went on TFM's show, I always came back to him. TFM is very articulate. He's thought about this stuff a lot. And while I disagree with some of his conclusions, you can't really fault the man for taking the time and thinking about the things in the way he has. Now, my disagreements with him, I'm not going to rehash them here. They're not disagreements with him as a man. I considered TFM my friend for a long time, and we had a falling out. It is what it is. I moved on, but I think that TFM, I believe, still wants to help men. I think he's still trying to help men, but I think that one of the valid points that he originally made, and I think he deserves to be credited with this, is that, and this was a conversation, actually, it was a series of conversations he and I had behind the scenes, but it was also a series of conversations we had while live streaming. So, like, I'm not doxing a private conversation per se. And TFM made a really valid point in that we don't shame women for sex toys. We consider these women who have sex toys as
Well,
super.
let me be clear. I'm not shaming him for the
No,
sex
no, no,
toy
no, no, no,
thing.
no,
I
no. That's
tried to make
just
that clear.
yeah. Just hear
Okay.
me out. Yeah, hear me
Okay.
out. I know where your defensiveness is coming from, but let me
Sure.
finish. So we don't shame women for having sex toys, for objectifying man to the point of a phallus, right? Because that's really what a sex toy is these women are objectifying men, and they want to have this double standard. Now, so in response, TFM is trying to say, look, if you're a man and you want a sex toy, that's okay too. Now, I think you bring up some valid points in that if you do things so often that they become an obsession. And it doesn't matter what those things are, right? If you are in a job and you go and you have a couple beers after work and that's just kind of your thing, you have a couple beers with your buddies, that's fine. But then if you start becoming an alcoholic, now you're not doing things in moderation anymore and you've taken it to the next level. Or let's say, all of a sudden you're going to decorate your truck in Budweiser gear, right? Right. And now you're driving the Budweiser truck because you like beer so much. Um, I think that those types of things become out of balance. And I think that the challenge here becomes, where do you healthfully implement something in your life compared to where do you take it so far that it becomes an obsession or it becomes psychologically unhealthy?
For me, the answer is simple. It's a relationship, and a marriage is
Absolutely. No, no,
essentially a
no. I,
relationship.
I I understand that, but I guess what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say is I think that's what people need to think about because,
sure.
while I've already stated my views in previous videos and you've stated your view here. I think really the takeaway is this, is that that's a symptom. If you do anything too much, it's going to become an obsession and it's going to become psychologically unhealthy.
Hmm.
And you see this all the time with people. In fact, you could even go to the gym and overtrain. In fact, there's many cases where the United States military, military people will overtrain, and then what ends up happening is they get injured as a result because they've trained too much. So I think that when it comes to those types of things, I think that his goal initially was trying to, basically say, look, if you're going to stigmatize men for sex toys, you need to stigmatize women as well. And we don't do that. Now, where it went from there, you know, I don't agree with where things have gone from there when it came to Celestina because
Yeah,
again, um you know, you can't walk away from women and say or shame men who date women if you're going to date a facsimile of a woman or you're going to marry a facsimile of a woman. It's no different. And so we're clear. There are a lot of MGTOW guys out there who date women. They have sex with women. They just don't cohabitate or get married or put themselves in a situation where
yep.
they believe they're going to be taken advantage of. Now, obviously, for every man, the the anti-fragility factor or the risk factor is something that each man chooses to weigh. There are men out there that are monks and they're great guys. There are men out there who they date women. They're great guys. So, for me, I think that again, looking at the political element and my belief or my discipleship, I guess, of the MGTOW philosophy is based on the manifesto because to me that makes the most sense from somebody with 25 years of legal experience, from somebody who was involved in politics for a period of time, for somebody who did a lot of research on this, somebody who wrote a book on these issues. you know to me the manifesto makes a lot of sense. It may not make a lot of sense for a lot of people, but again, you know men can choose what they're
So
going to do.
your book's dancing now.
I see that.
Yeah.
But I think that again, it's one of those scenarios that you choose your own way and you hope for the best. But if you're living an unhealthy lifestyle, if you're not a self-reliant man, if you're not trying to make your life better or challenge yourself to be a better you, doesn't matter if you're a better me. It doesn't matter if you're a better, Anthony Johnson. What matters is anybody listening to this, it's about you being better based on where you were yesterday,
Yeah,
where you
bingo.
were a week ago, where you were a month ago. Don't compare yourself to anybody else because as long as you're living your life and you are self-reliant or you're moving towards self-reliance and you're happy with that, do you. Just don't get caught up in the psychological damage or the physiological damage of any kind of addiction, whether it's sex addiction or alcohol addiction or drug addiction, and make sure that you live in an environment that is psychologically healthy, that is a psychological sanctuary as opposed to a high stress environment. And I
Mhm.
think that when you live out of balance, you're more likely to get obsessed. And what I
Yeah.
mean by out of balance, you've got to have some financial stability, potentially be financially independent. You've got to have social connections of some kind, unless you're a schizoid. No disrespect to schizoid, but they can live alone, and that's fine. Um, you've got to have your intellectual needs met. So in other words, you can't be starving intellectually. And then finally, you have to have your spiritual needs met. And what I mean by that is
Mhm.
that there are a lot of atheists out there in the world, and they believe a lot of things. And there are a
Mhm.
lot of Christians and Muslims and everybody else in the world who get their spiritual needs from that. The thing that we're seeing today with a lot of atheists on the left, especially feminists and communists and socialists, is that they've turned those political ideologies into religions, and they've become like, the socialist inquisition, so to speak. And they
Government is
have
God
this.
to them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
so understand that these are kind of the natural order of things. So even if you're an
Well,
atheist,
hang
don't
on.
don't
Let's
don't
pause
start
here.
worshiping something that's going to destroy your life.
Sure, I agree. And government is particularly dangerous, like fire, to worship. So it's stupid. I do want to pause here and kind of clarify because I know that someone's going to clip this, like TFM or somebody, to criticize it and attack it, and they're going to take my prior comments out of context. What they're going to do is try to straw man what I said to say that I'm shaming men for the dolls and sex toys and all this bullshit, and therefore it's a double standard because we don't criticize women for using dildos and vibrators and shit, whatever, right? That is specifically and exactly and diametrically the opposite of what I'm saying, right? That is not what I'm saying at all. I do not give a fuck like this guy's talking about. He's like, oh, you can't get STDs from a doll. A doll can't take you for alimony. All these blah blah blah. He's talking dolls up basically, right? That's strange on its own to mainstream culture. I'm not even gonna. That's obvious. I don't care. I don't give a fuck about you and your doll or whatever the toy, right? That doesn't matter to me. What matters is the relationship that dude has, which is pathological, with a doll, with an inanimate object. He has a in his head, it's like a real relationship. And my from what I can observe and from what I can tell as a third party, like an observer, and that is deeply, deeply fucking bizarre, and it's dangerous, and it's twisted. I called him in the show here earlier in the chat. I called him a school shooter with a YouTube channel. I mean that. I'm not fucking around. If you followed TFM a long time ago, like when you were hanging out with him, DDJ, I don't have a problem with that. I don't doubt that's like someone was saying some of the shows were good and stuff. You were on it, so this would, in my mind, give a lot of credibility to that. What I'm saying is this dude now, currently, and for a recent amount of time, specifically after you're split with him, right? He has a relationship with a fucking inanimate object that's completely gives him 100% of the power. That is like some Silence of the Lamb shit. That's some what is that guy's name? Bill.
Wild Bill.
Wild Bill, Buffalo Bill shit. That's Buffalo Bill shit. I'm not fucking around. If you think TFM has anything useful to say today, you're a fucking idiot. The guy is mentally deranged. He belongs in a padded room and with like long-term therapy. This is sick, a sick individual who's still in the fucking on YouTube and shit. He's fucked up in the head. I'm not fucking around. I make no apology for it. And if you disagree, I think you're a dumb fuck. Bottom line. And again, I don't care about the doll and the toys. None of that matters to me. I'm not even going to argue about it. I don't care. It's fine. I don't give a fuck. It's the relationship itself, not the items involved in the other little details and shit. Irrelevant.
So what you're
If you have a
saying,
relationship with the doll, you're fucked up in the head.
so what you're saying is that you're not going to marry the shotgun that's hanging behind you and try to, bang the
I
12
was
gauge.
I put a ring on the barrel yesterday, but I had to take it off. He cheated on me, or she cheated on me.
Right,
Well,
right.
I don't know. I was putting my dummy rounds through it, the snap caps, and she popped off on me, that bitch. Yeah, but no, it's sick. And if you don't see, if I'm telling guys straight up, man, this is what any fucking psychologist would tell you. Feminist douchebag or savage motherfucker like Sean Smith or Ken Curry and the guy is Robert Glover would tell you. This is not a controversial issue. If you know anything about mental health, it's pathology, and people need to get away from it. It's sick, man. It's sick. Now, I do want to get some questions, man. For you. I got some line item ones I want to get through. Hot seat for DDJ.
All
You
right,
ready?
let's do it.
All right, talk to me about the relationship between MGTOW and the Red Pill, two different tribes of the manosphere, which would be, I think, best illustrated by Reddit. On the Red Pill subreddit, you had about 300,000 guys before the quarantine. On the MGTOW subreddit, you had about 300,000, I think, before the quarantine. So, two different communities that were, at least recently and still to some degree, centered on Reddit. Red Pill Manosphere Tribe versus MGTOW Manosphere Tribe. What is your take on that, and what are the differences, and what are the agreements, and all that?
Well, I think that again, this goes back to my previous statement that, in the last probably since 2014, 2015, there have been a lot of MGTOW voices out there that basically kind of moved away from the manifesto and have kind of tried to change the definition of what MGTOW originally was because it was a more convenient definition for them and their particular brand. but I think that if we're really going to talk about the difference between MGTOW and the manosphere, I think that using Reddit is a poor comparison, because primarily when MGTOW got started, when these guys got started, they were talking on forums, they were talking on, the comments on blog posts and websites and those types of things. And while they used Reddit, Reddit wasn't the primary thing for a lot of them, right? It was just one component. And so I think when we talk about MGTOW versus the manosphere, there's a lot of people. I mean, PUAs have been around for a very long time. They've been
Mhm,
around since before the internet. Dating coaches, same thing.
mhm,
I think though that the proliferation in the manosphere, I think that you see a lot of MGTOW wisdom from the originators of the philosophy. Um, a lot of these things are parroted across the manosphere. In fact, if you remember, there was a website out there called Return of Kings,
mhm.
and Return of Kings was kind of it was Rush's thing before he took the God pill and became a Christian.
Yep.
And there were
That's
a
all
lot of
fake, by the
people.
way. He's not. He didn't take the God pill. It's all bullshit. It's a
Yeah,
scam.
but well, anyway, regardless of what you think of it, my point is that years ago on his blog, there were people who were talking about the MGTOW manifesto, and they were talking about the No Man blog and things like that, because a lot of these people got their ideas and got their belief systems and got their philosophy and got their manosphere knowledge and got their red pills from the original MGTOW content creators. Some of these people were on YouTube. Some of these people were writing for blogs. Some of them did both. Like Barbar had been around forever. He wrote a blog, and on top of that, he had a YouTube channel. So
But
there's
I see them as distinct communities, though. That's why I brought Reddit up.
well,
Reddit's a
they are
cool.
the same community. The only difference is that, again, it goes back to that cult of personality. So,
Well, no, I think they're different, man. That's what I'm trying to bring up, and I don't think that. I think it's a physical fact we can observe. They're not the same thing, and they fight. The MGTOWs sometimes will go
well,
after the red pill, and the red pill would make fun of the MGTOW
I
guys.
think that that's an accurate observation if you go back about 5 or 6 years. But I
Yeah,
think prior to that, I
mm,
think that the manosphere and the MGTOW community dovetailed each other more than they
sure,
fought.
I agree.
And I
I
think
agree.
that one of the challenges is that, again, 5 or 6 years ago, you started seeing all these manosphere personalities pop up on YouTube and the internet. And then they decided they wanted to grow their channels. So they created these drama marketing beefs with each other.
Hmm.
And, oh, we're going to fight for the customer base, so to speak. And so, and again, if you're selling dating coach classes or dating coach courses, or you've got some product to sell, no matter what that product is, you're going to shame those who don't use your product because you're trying to market your product as a better way of life. It's like the 1950s when people had, they were marketing washers and dryers to housewives. They're like, look, your life will be improved with this washer and dryer. You won't have to manually wash it anymore. And they sold them, left and right. I think the manosphere at some level is the same way. They're not necessarily admitting that you're just selling some fucking cheap dick webinar. They're trying to sell a lifestyle. They're trying to sell success porn and whatever their personal definition of success is. And so when it comes to that, I think that the main differences is that what people were threatened by Big Tow, the early Manosphere voices were threatened by MGTOW, and so they had to attack MGTOW in order to try to create some credibility for themselves. But I will
And
say this:
MGTOW's
some of the
older than red pill too, right?
it is,
Red pill didn't get started till like 2011, 2012. It's pretty late.
pretty much. And the other thing I would say is this: is that um, some of the criticisms of MGTOW that have happened, say, between 2015, 2021, not all of those criticisms are baseless. Many of those criticisms have their basis in fact, because again, there were people in the MGTOW community at some point that were trying to promote their own personal brand and under the guise of helping men. And so, whereas my view of the MGTOW community and the MGTOW philosophy is not only do I want to help men today, but I want to empower those men so that they can help the next generation of men.
Hmm.
I don't want people to come to my fish market and buy fish from me. I want them to come to my fish market and learn to fish so they can fish for themselves. Now, if they want to buy some fish until they learn how to fish, that's fine. That's up to them. But again, at the end of the day, you know, I can't care about you more than you care about yourself. So that's the truth right there. So if you invest in yourself, if you invest in improving your life, financially, psychologically, emotionally, and socially and spiritually, then yeah, Go do you and make those decisions. Um, but don't expect everybody else to give it for you. But there are people out here in these communities going, "Oh, look, you have to take a daily red pill." Let me ask you something. I'm a fucking 50-year-old man. I'll be 51 this year. Do
Nice.
I really need to be told not to put my hand on the hot fucking stove when I learned it at 3 years old? Really? Do I need to be reminded of that shit every day? Do I need somebody to infantilize me and say, "Oh, here you go, baby DDJ. Don't shit your pants now. Walk in for, oh my God, you did so great." No, fuck that. We're adults. We're self-reliant men, right? Some of these lessons that you learn in the manosphere, some of these lessons that these men learn from MGTOW voices, mine or anybody else that they listen to, they don't necessarily need to hear it every day. And you shouldn't be consuming MGTOW content every day, or even video content from everybody else every day. The point is to live your life. It's not to hear about how to live your life. Because I'll tell you, if you spend all your time reading about how somebody else lives their life, or watching somebody else's drama on YouTube, your life will pass you by. And time is a super powerful, non renewable resource, and you are in control of yours.
Well put. Next question for the hot seat, DDJ. What's the relationship between MGTOW and the black pill? The black pill is this new, not a new pill necessarily, but it's been rising in popularity and prominence, I'd say, the past 6 months, 12 months in the manosphere.
I think that the concise definition of MGTOW and the black pill, or the differences, I should say, the comparison, is that black pill people are nihilistic. And so some of them not only want to watch the world burn, but if you take Nietzsche's view of nihilism, what they do is they put their shoulder to the plow, so to speak, and they try to make the world burn. And really, in many cases, that is the essence of the black pill. Whereas MGTOW says, look, step one, walk away. Walk away from the drama, walk away from the bullshit, walk away from the gynocentrism that's out of control, walk away from the feminist trap. Don't play the rigged game. But once you've left, make a life for yourself. Try to be happy, participate in your community, make friends, have a job, get some self-esteem. And if you need psychological help or assistance, find like-minded people in your communities in order to do that, because you deserve to live a full and complete life. And just because you don't necessarily want to get married doesn't mean that you shouldn't enjoy life, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't participate in a community. And so in many ways, MGTOW, especially those who follow the manifesto, those MGTOW have hope. Those MGTOW have lives. Those MGTOW shower every day. They're financially independent. They know how to manage their lives in all these different arenas. They've listen. They talk to women. They communicate with women. They interact with women. They just don't marry them, and they don't support women who are not feminine. They don't support women who are not honest. In fact, they don't even support men who aren't honest. So I think that when it comes to,
But dude, we just gotta all get along, bro. We gotta unite against feminism.
no,
We gotta
no, we
unite with
don't.
the we gotta unite with the frauds, bro. We gotta unite
I
with the
tell this
frauds.
I tell this to Christians as well. There's nothing in the Christian religion that says you got to tolerate sin.
Mhm.
Okay. It's the same thing with, ethics. And that's the other thing too. One of the things that's missing from the manosphere, the modern manosphere, is ethics. It's
Mhm.
integrity. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying like, you have a duty to do this or a duty to do that per se, but I am saying that, look, as a MGTOW, you can walk away. You can build a new life for yourself. You can, basically say, here's the ugly truth, right? And the thing about black pill is that black pill people see the ugly truth for what it is, right? They do, but they don't have any solutions. In fact, they have less solutions than modern MGTOW do. And that's the problem, is that, when you become nihilistic and you just want to see the world burn, or you want to have your civil war or anything like that, usually the people who are promoting this have never been in war. They've never been in a life or death fight. They've never
Mhm.
been in a situation where their life has been genuinely threatened by someone else.
Yeah, they're a
And
bunch of
so,
beta male police, beta male dorks, BMPs.
well, I don't like to use that. I'm trying to get away from alpha beta, but I think the more accurate term is they are ignorant and unworldly. If you talk to somebody who's
Yep.
been in war, who's been in a
Yep.
combat zone, their view on physical altercations, whether it's one on one or whether it's civil war or anything in between, they are justifiably reticent to create those situations because they know that, you know, once you go down that path, things get really unpredictable really fast. And
Yep.
the thing that nobody wants to admit to is this: it doesn't matter what your skills are. The closer in proximity you are to a dangerous situation, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, the less your skills matter. Proximity always overcomes your skill set. And so that's why MGTOW walk away. You don't want to be around the psychological damage that feminists create or the abusive, misandrist environment that they foster. And so you try to create healthier environments for yourself. So I think that but
Mm.
to kind of circle back to the MGTOW versus black pill, I perceive black pill as being more nihilistic because I don't see them coming up with any kind of sustainable solutions, at least not from a societal level. Now, if we were living in, Mad Max, or if our life was, run by a video game, then that sort of black and white thinking might work. But unfortunately,
Mm.
that's not the case. And we don't get any extra lives. We just get the ones we have right now.
Yeah. Good take, man. I appreciate it. Next question, another hot take question. What's the relation? You've mentioned a little bit here throughout the show, men's rights activists, men's rights community. That would be guys like, I would say the current leader informally would be like Paul Elam. Obviously, Dr. Warren Farrell would be like probably the godfather or the founding father in a way of the men's rights community activism. Maybe not the only one, but one of them for sure, one of the most prominent. He was on the Red Man group with me last year. Great dude. But what's the relationship between the men's rights community and that whole wing of the manosphere, that tribe, and the MGTOW community? I'd say the men's rights are probably a little bit older, for example, but both are very dominant, I'd say, communities in the manosphere. So what's the relationship between the two? Some of the similarities and the differences.
I think that there's a portion of the MGTOW community and the men's rights community that dovetail, but I
Okay.
think that those in the MGTOW community, like myself, for example, I come from the men's rights community. But the problem with the men's rights community as a whole is that it's part of that out of control, out of balance gynocentrism. So what's happened in the last probably 10 or 15 years is that the majority of the larger men's rights groups have been taken over by women. And then what's happened is that these women, some of which, by the way, end up, you find out later, are feminist infiltrators who basically get into these leadership positions. They
Hmm.
manipulate their way through to get in the leadership position to defang the men's rights group that they're in. And this is called entryism, and it's a communist tactic that came out in like the 20s and 30s, 1920s, 1930s. And so it's called the Trotsky French turn. But that said, the men's rights community as a whole, in a general sense, has not been very effective. And the reason it's not been very effective is because men in society in general are considered utilities. And I
Hmm.
think that the idea of men's rights is is the wrong way forward. And what I mean by that is that feminists and the enemies of man have really done a fantastic job of stigmatizing the term and stigmatizing groups that are men's rights. I think the reality is this, and you could talk to any father in family court, and I think that he will probably agree with me, is that really what we should be discussing is family rights. And what I mean by family rights is that, a lot of men, myself included, we go back to family court to protect our children. It's not just about getting divorced or anything like that. It's about protecting our children. It's about protecting our genetic legacy, and it's about protecting our future. And so you can't have a family without a father, not a functional family. And the
Well,
studies
and
all back
but
that up.
rights, but family rights is not going to be. I like the terminology. It's an effective cultural weapon. I would agree with that. Where I would disagree is that I don't think it's going to be encompassing enough. And the Me Too movement, how toxic that is an illustration of that.
Well, but here's the thing that you need to understand:
Mm.
secular movements don't survive. They never have. And,
Mm.
we talked about TFM a little bit earlier on. And one of the things that TFM talks about consistently is the success of religious communities such as the Muslim communities, the Amish communities, the Mennonites, and how they are able to successfully live in societies that are not out of control,
Well,
like Western society is.
I can push back on that in a pretty useful way. So you're saying secular, but really what you mean is philosophies that are not supernatural, not religious necessarily. And
No,
religion,
what I mean is I don't.
hang on, a religion
I,
is just a philosophy.
I'm
That's
not
all it
talking,
is.
but hold on. I'm not talking about this in terms of a philosophy. The men's rights movement is not a philosophy. MGTOW
I
is.
understand.
The men's rights movement is an ideological stance, so it has political implications.
Sure.
And what I'm telling you is that um, when you have movements, the movements that survive, the only way they survive is to have a cause greater than themselves. So when
Mhm.
the founding fathers formed the United States, they formed it on Christian morality, even if they didn't necessarily always openly admitted it, right? And
Mhm.
then those religious beliefs guided that morality and created the basis of the country that we have today. And all I'm saying is that if you rebrand from men's rights to family rights, now you can involve Christian communities and you can incorporate Christian communities as allies, because the thing about Christian communities is they understand the value of family. They understand the value of raising your children with a
Well,
level of empirical morality.
some of them do. A lot of them are just feminists today. They're just
I'm not
completely
discussing the
feminist.
heretics, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
and,
But that's
and
most of them. That's most of them today. Most of them are
it's a
Jesus
lot of them. It's a
worshippers.
lot of them.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, like I said, there is an evangelical wave that is coming back, and they're not all just rebranding themselves,
I
right?
know. I know.
But I will say this: I think that men's rights and MGTOW, I think men's rights have the right idea, but the problem is that they allowed feminists to frame the conversation. MGTOW don't. MGTOW say, you know what? We're going to cut bait. We're going to go home. We're going to go over here, and we're going to let feminists talk to themselves because we know that's a self cleaning oven, and we know that they're going to create a circular firing squad. We'll come back. We'll pick up the pieces, and we'll rebuild society once it's done.
Hmm. Okay. Next question I wanted to ask you, similar hot seat question. What's the relationship or the stance? So, but I would say the relationship more so between MGTOW and TradCons. The MGTOWs, I think most, not all, but some at least would call TradCons like TradCucks and shit like that. So, what's
I
the stance there, MGTOW versus TradCon stuff?
Well, I will say this, that I about a year or two ago, I realized that there is a civil war amidst traditional conservatives, in the same way that there's a civil war between the Christians and the heretics who were trying to take over the church. And I kind of did some history to kind of educate myself because I really didn't understand the history. And I find that if you look at history, it kind of informs the present. And what I found is that back in the 70s and the 80s, neoconservatives were actually Democrats. They were voting Democrats. And some of them, before being voting Democrats, were open, out, and loud communists. And so now they rebrand themselves as neoconservatives. They show up with the Republican Party, the GOP, and now they have massive amounts of influence. So you have a large swath of the conservative movement today that really are communist light. They want big government. They want imperialism. They want all these different things. They want foreign intervention unnecessarily, and all these different BS things, right? And then you have your traditional conservatives, which really are truly traditional conservatives who don't believe in any of those things. And today, those people have been rebranded as like MAGA conservatives or
Mm.
America First conservatives, those types of things. And so the differences between MGTOW and the conservative movement as a whole, with that context of that civil war going on, is that a lot of MGTOW, especially the self-reliant ones who involve themselves in pushing for limited government, who are politically active, whether they vote or just informed on the issues, these MGTOW, I think, in a lot of ways, act with a lot more clarity than you see with traditional conservatives. So, for example, things that the MGTOW community was talking about, specifically myself and other people, 2, 3, 4 years ago, are just now starting to be talked about in the mainstream because they're just now figuring it out. And I think part of it was that they just were afraid to confront these issues. The red pill when it came to those issues was extremely bitter to swallow, and they lived in denial for a great deal of time. They had a normalcy bias that unfortunately may be fatal to the conservative movement. And I think now we're seeing a huge house cleaning happening in the
Mm.
conservative movement, and I completely support. But
Hmm.
I mean, you have every Tom, Dick, and Harry going, "Oh, I'm conservative." Oh, what's that Antifa sticker? Oh, that's the conservative branch of Antifa. We're a different kind of Republican. Yeah, okay, whatever. Line up against the wall. Okay, get the
A
guns.
George Bush Republican,
Yeah,
self-sufficient. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. That's
Losers.
so. There you go. Next question.
Okay. Next question. So, what's the MGTOW stance on the patriarchy? Now, that's kind of related to TradCon stuff, obviously, but I mean, much more legitimately, like a hardcore Christian, like Michael Foster, a good friend of mine, who's been on the show a lot with us. Spoke at 21 Convention. He's a Christian pastor, evangelical, like hardcore dude, and he's all 100% patriarchy. He says patriarchy is inevitable, which I love. To me, that's very similar to the futurist patriarchy, and he means it. He ain't fucking around. It's not like a joke or some slogan. He means it. So what's the MGTOW stance on something like patriarchy, past, present,
The
future?
MGTOW don't try to force patriarchy. That's not their main motivation, but they also understand that patriarchy is a natural consequence of supporting masculine men and feminine women. That's It's a natural consequence, and it's one of multiple. But the idea is that okay, maybe patriarchy happens. Neat. Now, if you're Christian, then and you're not a heretic, then you're going to support the biblical idea of patriarchy. But I think that the thing that people don't understand is that patriarchy doesn't necessarily mean that women are chattel, but it does mean that women have a role to play, and it's not at the same level as men, and it's not as subordinate as what a lot of feminists try to falsely paint it to be. And so I think that when it comes to that, yeah, women are meant to obey their husbands and meant to do all these things. However, husbands have duty to their wives as well, right? And that's the Christian belief of that. And so while I am Christian and I do kind of consider myself evangelical, i.e., not a fucking heretic, not that I have an opinion, um, I also consider myself MGTOW within that framework and in that guideline. And I think that we talked about the difference between the tradcons and the MGTOW. Listen, if there's any traditional conservatives listening with any kind of political influence, if you want to fix society, the first thing you have to do is repeal all the laws that discriminate against men. And then what you need to do is you need to get rid of anybody working in government that is supportive or was ever a member of socialist organizations, the Communist Party, or is ever donated financially or volunteered for Antifa, BLM, or any other organization that hates the United States. There has to be like a McCarthyism 2.0 for the country to survive without a civil war.
Hmm.
Next
Well
question.
put. Well put, man. Fuck yeah. So last question, I think on this set, the hot seat ones. What's now? We've talked about this a little bit, but I want to get like a clear take on it. What's the relationship or the stance of MGTOW versus pickup artistry and the pickup artist community that was a really seduction community, even it was called a huge part of the manosphere, and in some ways still is. It's kind of like dissolved or diluted into the rest of it, but it was massive in 2000s and even a lot of the 2010s. That's how I found it, 2005. Last point on this, by the way, last night there was a stream and somewhere in the manosphere, some small channel, like 500 subscribers. And they actually claimed that my company, 21 Convention, and the event started in the men's rights community. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that's, that. You're talking to DDJ. It's complete bullshit. We started in the pickup artist community, which is where I started. And I even invited Paul Elam, men's rights advocate, to speak at 21 Convention back in like 2012. He told me to go fuck myself, specifically because of all the pickup artist stuff, right? Now we're on good terms now. He was on the Red Man group last year and stuff, and we talk. He's a good dude. But yeah, I mean, the idea that my company was founded in the men's rights community is completely factually stupid nonsense, pickup artist stuff. And so that's where I come from too, personally. And then my company and even Redman Group through 21 Studios really comes back to the foundation and the pickup artist community. And I was not red pilled. Let me make that clear. Like in that time of my life, I was much more purple pilled. My red pill ideas only came from very physical, cold approach style interactions with women. And that gave me a red pill understanding. And a lot of pickup artists, I think, would be red pill, but it's very limited to that. And then beyond that, like the other issues in MGTOW and stuff focus on even men's rights, they're not red pill on. And I think it's eventually why the red pill community even got started as a hive off of maybe both the pickup artist community and even some of the MGTOW stuff like you're talking about. But bottom line, relationship between MGTOW and PUA.
I think that MGTOW, myself included, don't really have a lot of respect for PUA. And for
Mm.
myself, I think that the main reason I don't have a lot of respect for PUAs is because you really have to ask yourself a simple question. what did these men do for a living before they became PUA? And I think that's an important question to ask, because what happens is you separate the self-reliant men from the grifters, right? So a lot of these PUAs pretend, oh, I care about men. I want to get you laid. I want to do this. I want to do that. That's all fine and good. But the problem that you have is that this is a business. This is a complete business for these people. They're trying to separate you from your money. And the other side of it is that when it comes to the PUA communities, for many of these people, it's a grift, right? So they'll take you to Vegas and they're gonna show you the field test, and you're gonna walk up to the super hot chick and pick her up. But what they don't tell you is that a week earlier they paid this woman to be the pickup,
Well,
right? To
that's not
give her.
always the case. I used to take
I'm
guys
not saying.
out.
Listen, I'm not saying it's always the
Yeah,
case, but I'm saying it does happen too often, right?
yeah,
to,
for
to
sure.
the point it's a fucking meme. But my
Yep.
point
Yep.
is that these guys sit here and they're trying to basically go, oh, look how I do it. Look at this and this and that. The number one lesson you can learn from pickup artists is this: you don't have to be a genetic alpha male to get laid, because many of these pickup artists, they're not supermodel material. Okay, let's just be honest. They're guys who they have nice clothes, they have decent grooming, they have decent social skills, they have a little bit of social acumen, they know a little bit about the world, they've been laid a couple times, and they go to the gym occasionally, right? That's it. That's it. MGTOW say focus on yourself. Don't focus on her. Focus on yourself. And I have to say that there's a dating coach out there named Steve the Dean Williams,
Oh yeah.
and we disagree on a fair amount of things. But I'll tell you what, I have nothing but respect for this man, because he says what's on his mind. He'll say it to me. And the one thing he's absolutely correct on, and this is where we agree, and that is this: if you work on yourself, pussy will come out of the woodwork. You don't need a $1,000 webinar to go do it, and you don't need to approach every woman under the sun like a desperate, thirsty cuck. Because let me tell you something. If you're a
Pussy
self
beggar. Pussy
Yeah,
beggar, right?
yeah. If you're a self-reliant man, right? And either you're purchasing your own house or you're renting a nice house, you're clean, you're relatively fit, you don't even need to have a six-pack, right? You got a decent car, you have a little bit of personality. The women will find you.
Mhm.
That is the reality. And that's what Steve the Dean talks about. Okay. Women are just they will show up in the weirdest fucking places. You'll go to some place, you'll be like, God damn, there's gonna be no women here. This is gonna be fucking great. And then you turn around and you're like, are you fucking kidding me? Jesus Christ. I went to the goddamn Antarctica, and now there's these three bitches down here trying to fuck me. Bitch, how did you get here? Right. And so, but that's the point. The point is that MGTOW say, focus on you. Focus on your life. Make your life holistic. Have hobbies, have interests. People always say, like smart people anyway, they say women are human beings, men are human doings. Go do things.
So are
You
you
will.
telling me Steve the Dean's a MGTOW?
No, he's married.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
Right,
kidding.
right. Yeah. I mean, I'm
Steve the
not.
Dean's MGTOW. Damn, son.
Now, I will say this. I mean, I appreciate that, Steve the Dean may not always be actively married, but it's my understanding that he is,
I don't
right?
know. I don't know. No
Not
comment.
my turn to babysit, but I'm saying, but I'll tell you what, there are a lot of guys out there who deny their MGTOW, and they are. And some of these guys are PUA dating coaches. Some of these guys are, trad cons. They're not
Mhm.
married. They know they don't want to get married. Like the guy who played Superman, he took all kinds of shit. What's his name? The Is he
Recently?
British or
Oh yeah, the British
Austrian?
dude. No, he's British, I think.
Yeah.
Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill.
Yeah, Henry Cavill. Henry
Yeah.
Cavill's MGTOW. He came out and fucking said it. I mean, he all but said it. He basically said that he didn't want to date modern women because he thought that they were cancer. That is a MGTOW viewpoint, right?
That's a true statement as well.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, why? And here's the thing, MGTOW, no, look, if you need to get laid, all you need to do is do a booty call. You don't even have to go to a date, right? It's like that old school rap song. You're thinking lobster, I'm thinking Burger King. Okay. It's that whole scenario. Literally, that's where it's at. And there's a lot of guys out there that are within the MGTOW community who they still see women, but they still have lives. They own their own car, they own their own house. Many of them own their own business. And all these people whether they identify with the term or whether they've heard it or not, they know that you don't hang out with trashy women if you want to get married. They know that you don't go out and bottom feed, right? I mean, you could even go to chapter 7 in the Bible for Proverbs for anybody who wants to read it. The whole fucking chapter is about avoiding adulterous women.
Mm.
Okay? MGTOW understand that most modern women today are adulterous. And the thing is that, there's a lot of guys out there who are going to shame men, and some men get rejected. I got rejected. That's not where the story ends. That's how men discover the red pill. It's not where it ends. Men sometimes get sent their own way only to find out they can choose to go whatever way they want to. And men who couldn't get laid because they're insecure or because, they're financially not secure, they're stressed out. They remove those stresses from their life. They remove all those other things from their life. They become self-reliant. They dedicate themselves to being a better man that they were yesterday. Then at that point, they can choose to continue to walk away from women. They can choose to date women. They can choose to get married if they want to. That is up to them. MGTOW is not meant to be a fight against feminism. All
Mm.
MGTOW is there for is to educate men on the dangers of feminism and the modern women monsters it's created, and to say, look, now you have the warning. What you choose to do with that warning is up to you based on what you feel your risk tolerance is. That's it.
Okay. Well put. Two more questions. We'll kind of wind it down here, then end the show. It's been a little over 2 hours. So, what is your take on, I would call it off-brand MGTOW? Guys who like were MGTOW and then they rebrand and repackage into something new, legitimate reasons or not, or somewhere in between. You know what I mean? Those people who like
Well,
rebrand like
there are a
that.
couple guys out there, so I actually know a little bit about this.
Okay.
I've spoken with some content creators out there probably about 2 years ago when I kind of stepped back. And there were a lot of people in the MGTOW community that were not only misinforming people, they were using their YouTube channels as like their cathartic personal therapy without a therapist, right?
Yep.
And so you were watching like the psychological deterioration of their life, one video at a time.
Mm.
And a lot of these long-term MGTOW people, some of these guys had been in the community for 10 more years. They realized that the MGTOW brand, so to speak, put a bullseye on their head and basically created more problems than it was solving for these guys. So a lot of them behind the scenes remain MGTOW, but they don't actually say the term because they're trying to game the algorithm for YouTube, and
Yeah.
they're trying to limit their exposure to cancel culture and things like that. Now, with that said, there are just as many guys out there who will start out as MGTOW channels, and then they will switch up to either dating coaching or they'll switch up to whatever, and they'll drop the MGTOW brand because what they want to do is they know that um, a lot of guys who follow MGTOW content, they don't listen to bullshit, right? They're not their bullshit detector is on high because MGTOW constantly gets shamed. So they're reticent. So when people start speaking universal red pill truths, what ends up happening is like, oh yeah, let's follow this guy. Well, then his audience builds up, and then he ends up leaving the community because he's like, okay. And he was never MGTOW to begin with. I know there was one guy like Voltaire.
Mm.
You look at Coach Greg Adams, for example, is another. I mean, he's a PUA. He's selling dating. I mean, he may call himself whatever he wants. He's a dating coach, right? And don't
Mm.
get me wrong. I mean, if he wants to follow the free anus lifestyle, he can be a free anus as much as he wants, but he's not MGTOW.
I will
Now he
say
might.
this. I will say this positively about MGTOW. Of all the tribes in the Manosphere, MGTOW, PUA, Red Pill, the MRAs, and even the Patriarch, Tradcon dudes, I think the MGTOW are probably some of the most savage and maybe the most savage tribe. They're savage. Like I think these guys not getting pushback from their own fans and stuff. Those are the MGTOW dudes who are pissed off and they're not pussies, and they'll speak
Well,
up right
the
on the
nice
internet
thing
at least.
about yeah, and the nice thing about MGTOW is like, look, if I'm wrong and I know that I'm wrong and somebody calls me out, I admit it. I'm like, yeah, I'm wrong. Or if somebody disagrees with me, nobody has to agree with me.
Mm.
This is my opinion, right? I'm just a person. I'm a guy. I'm a nobody behind a keyboard. I always have been. I always will be. And anybody who thinks they're anything but that is going to end up falling on the sword of their own hubris.
Mm.
And so there are many ways to get where you're going. But if you're full of shit or you're a grifter, number one, I'm going to probably call you out if you're a grifter. That's number one. And I've called out many people over the years
That's
for it.
just feminine. That's feminine. It's such drama, dude.
Yeah,
It's
I got your
feminine. It's
feminine
feminine
hanging.
energy.
Okay. Yeah, I got
Feminine energy.
yeah, look behind the sack. My point is that, but on the same token, you know, there are different MGTOW content creators that appeal to different audiences. So wherever you're at, you have a choice of MGTOW voice that
Well,
resonates with you.
that's my
Go
next
ahead.
question is what do you recommend for guys for sources? Like obviously there's your channel. Oh, how do we get this up? Boom.
Well,
Who's your channel? Who else do you recommend?
go
YouTube
go
and
to
off
go to
YouTube.
misandrytoday.com.
Okay. Is a link up here? Let me see.
Yeah, I think that's it right there.
Yeah, I'll pull it up in a second here.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
I would say that if you want good, solid content, first and foremost, I would look at a lot of the old content creators. I would look at a lot of Barbar's content. While I don't agree with everything he says, he's got a lot of good content. He's been around for a long time. I would look at Stardust. I would look at Human. I would look at Sunrise Hoodie. All of these guys are great content creators. And then what I would do is I would look at Coltane. I would look at Paul Proteus. And by the way, rest in peace, Paul Proteus. In my view, he had the biggest impact on me kind of going toward the red pill and going my own way. And he's an everyman without any kind of ego. So there's a lot of people like that. So Coltane, Razorblade Candy, Paul Proteus, Stardust, Human, these guys are MGTOW greats.
Okay.
Barbar, a lot of really solid, good content from these people that is more than just feminist response videos or gotcha moments or
So these are the godfathers of MGTOW, essentially. Loosely
um
speaking. Loosely speaking.
I think I would call them the elders.
Okay.
The elders of MGTOW. Now, the thing is that you have to remember each one of these content creators offers something different. They have a different perspective. They have a different way of communicating. And so you might not necessarily resonate with Stardust, but you might resonate with Human, or you might not resonate with Paul Proteus, but you're going to resonate with Barbar. And they all take it from a different perspective, but they're all saying in general terms, they all say similar things, but they all have their grains of irrefutable wisdom that are undeniable. And I should also say this: even if somebody doesn't, I don't respect the bitter bachelor because let's be honest, if you look at a lot of his videos, a lot of what he says is a regurgitation of what TFM said years ago. All he's doing is recycling old content and trying to monetize it. I'm not convinced that the bitter bachelor is truly MGTOW, and I am deeply concerned that he is one of those people that is just trying to use the brand and go from there. With that said, I don't know a lot about the bitter bachelor other than things I've seen and who he associates with, but the videos that I've seen, it's the same shit, almost sometimes word for word, of what TFM has said years ago. So while we all kind of say a lot of similar things, we say it in our own way. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are really good. Yeah, and two people I missed, Undead Chronic, Terrence Pop. Those guys are phenomenal. And the nice thing about like Terrence Pop is he's more mainstream and he appeals to the military. And so, a lot of red pills happen in the military, even if you're not part of the manosphere, just because guys are trying to take care of other guys when they're in foreign countries. They become brothers in arms, so to speak. So those are good, solid content creators as well. And again, I don't necessarily agree with what any of these people say, but I think that it's important that people understand who these people were, because right now we don't have a lot of current content creators out there that openly identify as MGTOW or have openly identified as MGTOW that are out there trying to help men.
What do you
Now,
think of
with that,
Sandman?
I like Sandman's stuff, but the problem is that Sandman is a self-admitted shill. He
Okay.
does all his videos are sponsored videos. They're videos for pay. Sandman's there to make money. He says a lot of honest and true things, but I think that, and I don't mean Sandman's a shill in that he's only out for the money. I believe he believes what he says he's doing.
So you think
Unlike
Sandman's a net positive to the Manosphere and the MGTOW?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay.
Sandman is a net positive for the manosphere, but I think that sponsored videos, each and every video he does, I think he's just using it to promote his lifestyle. But I will say this. I respect Sandman. I respect a lot of what he says, even though I disagree with some of the things he says. But Sandman actually had a career before he ever became a MGTOW content creator. He was a wedding photographer. He actually has a skill set. Yes, I did forget about fucking Spetsnaz. You got me. There you go. Spetsnaz as well. Spetsnaz is super important. So, but the nice thing about Sandman is Sandman does a really good job of kind of like a MGTOW 101 sort of thing from an anecdotal point of view. So he kind of explains it. I'm just not a big fan of the nasal voice. Sandman here. So, you know, and again, it's just that's my own personal thing. And again,
Dude, I
it's
actually
just
thought Sandman was a robotic voice he was like using that he bought or something to say words until I saw him on a live stream. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That's his real voice. Holy shit.
yeah. And again, he's you know, I'm taking shots at him,
It's
and
like
I'm sure he'll
it's like
take
some
shots at me, whatever.
it's like some
It's all in good.
iRobot shit going on.
Yeah, I don't have any ethical issues with Sandman other than, like I said, you know, he's just trying to make a buck doing it. So,
And I
oh
think a
my
lot of
God,
people
somebody pulled out Black Dragon. Oh God, I forgot about him too. There was a guy. Are you talking about the Black Dragon blog, Jared?
That's Caleb Jones. I don't think he's MGTOW. I know he spoke at 21 convention. I met that guy.
There was a guy from Black Dragon blog who was kind of a PUA type, but he spouted a lot of MGTOW wisdom.
I don't. Maybe that is. Maybe it's someone else though. I don't know. Maybe Jared.
I don't know. Maybe somebody I don't know. I will say this. That's funny. Somebody said Donovan Sharp is the best big content creator. That's hilarious. But I think, you know, like I said, I think that, you know, these people approach people from a different viewpoint. Somebody just mentioned Howard Dare. Apparently he got doxxed, and I don't know if it's truly him, but the dox that I saw on video, Howard Dare was married and he was like a college professor. But you know, a lot of people liked his stuff. He had a lot of people listening to his live show.
So the Sharp Mama is not MGTOW in your opinion?
He never has been. In fact, he's actually before his channel got struck down, he did anti-MGTOW videos.
I know.
And yeah, Druid, Aaron Clary, no respect for him. He actually doxed Barbar and Stardust, according to Razorblade Candy. That video is still up on YouTube. Not a big fan of doxers. So yeah, so you know, but I will say this: I think that you know the MGTOW community is there's not a lot of current creators that are out there. So one of the reasons I wanted to bring up the website, my website. So I have a website out there for those who don't know. It's called MissAndrewToday.com. And if you go to the website as he tries to bring it up here.
Boom.
So one of the things that I've done on MissAndrewToday.com is this is not just a landing page. So my videos are there. There's articles from myself and other authors that are there. If you want to write something on Miss Andrew Today, you want to be a contributor or an author, reach out to me at ddj@missandrewtoday.com. But also there are memes here. You can download some of the memes. I've got a bunch more I'm getting ready to upload. There's a lot of research.
This is interesting.
Well, we're going to get there in a second. So we also have research there. We upload research papers to the site so that people can deal with that. No, ma'am is an important aspect of the site. It's the MGTOW Bible, in my opinion. If you scroll through it, I would start with the masculine principle.
Book of Pook. This is cool.
Correct. Nice. Now, not everything is there yet, but what we've done is we've backed up the entire No Man blog, which is thousands of pages. And the reason we did that is because the No Man blog is hosted on Google Blogspot. And we are concerned.
Shill alert. You have ads, bro. Oh, you're not pure, bro. You have to die now. You're just shill, bro.
Yeah, whatever. I don't care.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So my point is though, and we've also got permission from the guy who runs the Men's Tribune, and that's under the No Ma'am side as well. And what we've done here is we've taken all this information, some of which is 20 plus years old, and we've put it here as kind of a library of Alexandria of the manosphere, so that people can go to this site and they can just kind of read it, and they can do, you know, and go from there. And again, there's no paywall or anything like that. You don't have to enter in your email or anything. It's just, you know, you can surf anonymously, check it out. A lot of really good content. And you're going to find out too, if you spend some time on No Ma'am on this site, or if you find the original blog, if you spend some time there, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of the stuff that a lot of content creators have said the last 4 or 5 years, they plagiarized off of No Ma'am.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that's out there, and I think that that's extremely important to know, because then you're going to get a better idea of things. But more importantly, you don't necessarily have to watch a 10 or 20 or 30-minute video or a 6-hour live stream in order to get the red pill knowledge you're looking for. You can go to the MGTOW Bible, you can scroll through, you can search the website, and you can find what you're looking for. Now, as you can see, it's a pretty decent website. It costs me money to host. It costs me money for traffic. Everything there costs me money. If you want to support the website, feel free to buy my book. Feel free to subscribe to me on Subscribestar. Now, if you go to the shop on the right, there's a drop-down menu for the shop. You can buy Misandry Today gear. All this supports the website. I have a job. I don't necessarily need the money for myself, but I would like to have my content financially support itself. And so there's products you can
Oh, I'll
purchase.
buy a mug.
I even have
I'm
Miss Andrew
gonna.
Today underwear. Okay.
I don't care about the underwear. I'm gonna get a mug though.
Yeah, there's mugs. You could graffiti with stickers. You can go take
Nice.
them, buy 100 stickers and run through town and just stick them on telephone poles. You know,
I feel like a mug salesman now. Buy
yeah.
the mugs, folks. Buy the fucking mugs. Get your mug. We have
Hashtag shill
21 cup.
alert. God
We got
damn, that
water bottles.
DDJ is a shill. I'll tell you what though. So I had a couple other stores that I was going to go through. I actually built my web admin built that store from the ground up. He did a lot of work on it, because every store they're like, oh no, you can't use the term Misandry Today, or you can't have the Misandry Today logo, or your MGTOW, we can't do it. So you have to understand, like, everything on this website was professionally built from the ground up. Everything. And we had to. And again, it's because of cancel culture and things like that. But
This is good, man. I like
we
it.
want this website, like I said, this website is a destination place. You'll find videos there, you'll find articles there. I try to blog at least once a week there now. If you're interested in writing for the site, or you have an opinion that you want to share, feel free to contact me. We'll publish your article on the site. Again, the no ma'am stuff is really super important. So it's very, because again, I don't want this knowledge lost, because I don't want some grifter to show up and go, oh well, here's the thing, this is the knowledge that I only have, and you got to go behind my paywall and buy my $1,500 webinar in order to get the content. Well, you can go here and get it for free. There's if you go back to the no ma'am, there's actually a seduction book there that one guy wrote. I'm not a PUA, but I'll tell you what, a lot of what he says is valid advice. So, and if you're more of the philosophical type, you need to read the Book of Pook. So again, I just want to make sure that people understand that this stuff is there. My goal is to help men, but it's to help men help themselves. It's not to
Yep.
babysit you.
Me too, man. It's good. It's a very good model to have, and it's healthy. That's what it reminds me of the scene. Yeah, that's why it pisses me off so much in the manosphere. I'm gonna just come out and say it. So many dudes, including some guys I still I still kind of, I'm frustrated with Terrence Popp. I think he's making a really bad decision. That seems to be consensus among MGTOW and many others on YouTube. And publicly, that's my public opinion. And I think it's a pretty common sense opinion to take honestly. But, so many dudes in the manosphere, whatever the specifics of it are, the fraud father, for example, is a much more egregious, malicious issue. I don't think Terrence Popp's malicious in any way, shape, or form. But people talk about saving lives, saving lives, saving lives. I think this is complete bullshit. Like whatever these guys think, this is not how things work, or it's definitely not how they should work. If you think back to the Matrix series, where of course the red pill fucking came from, and the blue pill as an analogy in common popular culture, what did Neo say? What did Keanu Reeves say as an actor in, I think, the second movie, right? I didn't save you, kid. You saved yourself. And that idea seems to be completely going over everybody's fucking head in the manosphere, right? Oh, he saved me. This guy saved me. That cult of personality saved me. That dude on YouTube saved me. It's different, I think, too, when they say a person saved them versus a thing. The manosphere, like, saved my life out of divorce rape. MGTOW saved my life. That to me is not perfect, but it's different from a person. That's where you get codependency and this weird shit. And a lot of these dudes will fucking promote it. Rolo's the worst of all by far. No one's even in his category of promoting this crap. It's like, dude, you didn't say. I get people emailing me and the speakers and stuff that I know. They email me directly. 21 Convention saved my life. It's like, I appreciate that it was a tool for you to use to help you improve your life and even save yourself from some really serious shit, including maybe, you were legitimately suicidal, but you saved yourself. Like, you're responsible for your own actions. I didn't fucking save you. Unless I physically pulled you out of like a pool, like you're drowning, you saved yourself. You did something. You took action. So all these dudes talk about saving lives. This is fucking weird, man. I don't like it. They need to be saying, I didn't save you. You saved yourself. And they don't do that. Very rarely do men do that. These leaders, they feed off this shit, especially the fraud father, Rolo.
Well, and let me kind of say this too. I think you bring up some good points, and I kind of want to dovetail a little bit off of that.
Sure.
Um, One of the biggest complaints that I've seen about feminism and communism, especially now today in cancel culture, is there's no concept of forgiveness, right? We're humans, we're all fallible, and I'm no less fallible than anybody else. I fuck up, I make mistakes, we all do. And
I married a hooker, bro. I mean, straight
there
up.
you, yeah, we all did. Just some of them didn't identify as such at the time. All I'm saying, all I'm saying is that uh, my point is that when we make mistakes in the manosphere, you see people make mistakes, especially if you're like a MGTOW voice, right? If you make a mistake in the manosphere, you have a difference of opinion. Many people in the community, not just MGTOW, but in the manosphere, many people in these communities, there's no redemption. There's no trying to understand the other side. It
Mm,
becomes a myopic me versus them, which is the thing that the manosphere is supposed to be standing against. It's about, feminists and communists deal in absolutes. Totalitarians deal in absolutes. And, when you're teaching your son how to ride a bike and he falls riding the bike, do you pull out your open carry handgun and put a bullet in his head and go, "I'm sorry, you failed"? Right?
Jesus.
No, you don't. You
Yeah.
go, okay, wipe the blood off. Don't worry about the broken bone. It'll heal itself. Get on the bike and start riding. Right? You give them another chance to succeed. And men need to understand that, and strong men do. True strength, sometimes, especially when you're trying to help those you care about, is concealed in gentleness. It's
Mm,
not some totalitarian Darth Vader bullshit. Men have emotions and feelings like everyone else. That's number one. So this idea that no man can be redeemed of a mistake they make is completely totalitarian. Now I'm not saying that, like, if you're a murderer or a child abuser, that um you don't necessarily deserve redemption. I'm not going to be the one who gives it to you. That's only something God can do. And the best I can do, because I care, is make the appointment. But that said, I think that's number one. Number two, self reliant men who think for themselves have the right and the duty to disagree where they do. No one should feel like they can't speak their mind. I speak my mind all the time, and I get a lot of criticism for the shit that I say. But I
yeah.
believe in what I say, which is why I fucking say it. Okay. If you look at my Subscribestar right now, I'm not making any money on Subscribestar. I'm not making a shit ton of money off of my website. And even though YouTube has remonetized me, and yeah, you can watch my videos in the background to help my monetization, but I'm not making a lot of money off of that either. But the point is, I'm not doing it for that. The only thing I care about is that the work I do online to help men is self-sustaining. I don't need to pay my rent with this money. I don't need
Mm,
to pay my electricity with this money or to purchase my food with this money. I have another source of income, but I want this to pay for itself. And if you find value in it, that's great. But on the same token, if you don't agree with what I say, don't listen. Go listen to Sandman. Go listen to someone else. Go, whoever you resonate with. And the reality is that even the people I disagree with, like I disagree with some of what Sandman says, I disagree with some of what TFM says. These two men are helping men. They may not be helping everybody, but there are men out there that they've helped, and I'm sure that there are other men out there that they will help in the future. Because regardless of whether or not I choose to disagree, it's not my turn to fucking babysit. Neither is it theirs. They can go do their own thing their own way. I'll go do my thing my own way, just like Stardust does, just like Human does, and everybody else. And I think that this idea that we're not allowed to respectfully disagree without
yeah.
everything turning into World War III, that's some totalitarian bitch thinking stuff. And we should never tolerate that. Now, again,
It's what people do when they surround themselves with yes men and sycophants. The fraud father is
yeah,
a perfect example of that. No one
Yeah.
disagrees with this dude that he hangs out with. Anybody who does gets excommunicated. Case in point, Dr. Sean Smith. He had a debate with Rollo publicly on Rich Cooper's channel. It's still up. Since that happened, he blocked Sean Smith, and it's all fucking dead. And all of a sudden, Sean Smith went from this great dude with a great book to who's that? I don't know the fucking dude. I mean, the level of it's immature bullshit, like little kids basically. They can't tolerate honest debate and honest disagreement. Like, hey, I don't agree with you, and end discussion. We're just not going to agree. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And
fine. I don't got a problem with that.
yeah, I mean that's my point.
No.
Every man is going to go his own way in a different way, within reason, of course.
Mhm.
But I think that just because one content creator, don't make it us versus them. The only time it's appropriate to make it us versus them is when you're standing against someone who has no ethics, when you are
Yes.
standing against totalitarianism,
When
when
you're
you're
standing
standing.
against something deeply corrupt, deep
Yeah,
fraud, deep
feminism,
totalitarianism,
communism,
yeah,
socialism, right? And their
or
followers.
or frauds. If there's a net negative in
Yeah,
this community, then fuck them. They're
absolutely.
frauds. Like,
Yeah,
kick them out.
absolutely. And I'm
Yeah.
not, I mean, I know Undead Chronic likes roast videos, and that's fine. He can have them. And I know sometimes I roast people, but I don't do it specifically because I'm roasting people. I do it
Yeah,
specifically because it's a public service announcement.
that's right.
And I want to, if there's a greater motive behind it. It's not just I want to make somebody, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or something. But again,
Yep.
it doesn't matter whether you listen to, who you ever you listen to on the internet. My point is this: get the red pills from wherever you can get them. My website, Miss Andrew Today, is just one resource of many, but there's not a lot of MGTOW content creators anymore that are making videos on the caliber of Stardust or Paul Proteus or some of these other people. And human stuff is good, but again, he may not resonate with you. And because he's from Australia, he may have a very Australian point of view. Whereas maybe if you're in Europe, you may have you want somebody with a European point of view or something like that. So
Yeah.
whether those, I mean, all these guys are great guys, but whether what you choose to listen to is fine. Just don't let some fool separate you from your money, and don't let some fool lead you down a dark path because they want to create some kind of cult, or because of some kind of
Yeah.
they want another world war, or they want the incel apocalypse or anything like that. Walk away from those
So
people, ghost the shit
apocalypse.
out of them.
When does the incel apocalypse happen? Before or after the single mother apocalypse we're in now?
Honestly, I think it's going to be about as successful as most incel suicides because they fail at that too.
Okay. Damn. Well, hey, we need to wrap up. I gotta bounce. This has been a pretty awesome show, though, man. I really appreciate you hopping on today. I think we got a lot done, a lot accomplished here, investigating the MGTOW community, the MGTOW history, and its relationship to the rest of the manosphere and stuff like that. It's been awesome, man.
I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate everybody kind of keeping an eye out and watching. And
Fuck yeah.
I also, for those that do disagree with me, I see a couple in the comment section. I appreciate the fact that the disagreement was civil.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up today's show, episode 140. DDJ, thank you very much. Make sure you pick up his book on Amazon. It's a very good book, very thick. Look at that spine. Oh, look at that. Oh, fat, nice fat book, like a thick woman. Get that shit, yeah. So with that, get it on Amazon, guys. Link in the description and then the comments too for the chat. It's pinned at the top. It's a cool book. It always sells out at 21. I buy like 20, 30 copies. Dudes buy that shit. Like they snap it right up. You're not even there, like at least as of yet. And they're just like, oh, let me buy that shit. I'm like, yeah. But also, guys, support the show. We'll hit like, hit share, leave a comment, like a regular comment. Helps boost the video and the algorithm, crap. And also check us out on BitChute. DDJ is on BitChute as well. Miss Andrew Today, 21 Studios is on BitChute. We're also both on Odyssey Library. It's like a new YouTube competitor. It's pretty savage. My best hope is for Odyssey, I think, to compete with YouTube. That's my hopeful my pick right now based on competitors to YouTube. I don't know if you agree or not. We could talk about it on a future show. Last thing though, Redman Group and 21 Studios are supported and sponsored today by 21 University. Shill alert, full shill. Go to 21university.com, get a free account, free 30-day trial, check it out. And if you want to stay, it's $19.99 a month. I appreciate it. It's like Netflix for men. It's pretty fucking savage. Episodes of the Redman Group, hundreds of speeches from 21 convention, interviews, all this stuff. And it's better than YouTube because it's higher quality, the videos actually. And then it's censorship free and ad free, and you actually support the content, which I appreciate to keep making these videos for 15 years now. And it's also on the App Store too. So on the Apple App Store, download, search 21 University. It's a free app. It's fucking nice. And same thing for Google, and that'll work on iPads and Android tablets too. That's it. Peace out, DDJ. Preach, dog. Let's stay private and chat a little bit. Adios, guys. See you next week.